1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman & Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game, live on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, you name it. We are there. I was watching Robbie and Rexroad all morning this morning on TV. Just throw it on Caroline on YouTube, just boom, it's right there. And to see those guys, I think it's my computer. Let me turn this down. Sorry about that, everybody. To see those guys on TV, they are what you would expect. But it was good to be able to watch it and listen to it.
What does that mean?
They're what you expect.
Okay.
Well, what do you expect?
I have high expectations.
Then they are what you expect.
Okay, well, good.
But it was funny listening to them react to me the whole time, then me react to them reacting to me, but that was pretty much what it was. So, again, we're on YouTube every day. Just search 1025 The Game. We're live. Boom. If you're at your home doing things, you can see the very, very handsome faces of King Handsome, yours truly, and of course, Miss Caroline Fenton.
It's still not a thing.
Okay.
You can keep trying.
So I want to start on this today. SEC Media Days. Now, I'm going to level with the audience. Chase McCabe is there with our friends at Volunteer Hose and Gasket. He's already talked to Velus Jones. I believe he's going to talk to Alante Taylor, Tennessee later. I believe he's going to talk to Josh Heupel later today on the show. So we will have that live from Hoover, courtesy of Volunteer Hose and Gasket. But SEC Media Days sometimes can get to be very boring. Every coach gets up there and they tell you, boy, I'll tell you, our players are in the best shape of their life. We feel really good about what we're looking at right now. We feel like we've got a team we're ready to go to war with. Okay? I've heard that from everybody. I've heard it from Derek Mason. I've heard it from Mark Stoops. I've heard it from everybody. I mean, it's generally speaking a lot of the same. In 2018, Jeremy Pruitt's first media day, the only manufactured anything of note was a little drama that started right here on this show with Aaron Murray and Jeremy Pruitt. And that was it. I mean, it was kind of boring. So when I listen to these press conferences, I know what fans are listening for. Fans are listening for we're going to build this the right way. We're going to build this the Mississippi State Bulldog way. Hail State. And fans like that. That's an opening press conference. And they care about winning the press conference no matter how often they know in their hearts winning a press conference doesn't really matter. Jeremy Pruitt. I heard somebody today locally bashing what Jeremy Pruitt. Josh Heupel's press conference was already better than anything Jeremy Pruitt gave. Jeremy Pruitt not only slam dunked the opening press conference, his introduction press conference, he crushed his SEC Media Days opener. Everybody thought Jeremy Pruitt was the man. We saw Jeremy Pruitt coach. So I don't take much out of that. Heupel was fine. His press conference, it was okay. But there's one thing he said in his open that I think is really important. But it's not important that he said it. It's important if he does it. And this is what this is what Josh Heupel said today that I find to be very important. Take a listen.
The first priority when I and our staff got to Tennessee was about relationships, and it still is today. That'll be the foundation of everything that we do inside of our program. But that came through a conversation with our players. The first night I got hired, I had about an hour and a half meeting with them, and one of the things that I realized that they recognized that they wanted and needed was connection. And that's why we spent an inordinate amount of time as a staff connecting with our players and getting to know them, their strengths, their struggles, their greatest triumphs, the hardships that they've faced, and have had a lot of fun in doing that. In recruiting over the last 6 months, our staff has put a ton of time and energy into developing those same relationships with recruits. And we've started inside out in our footprint here in Tennessee and then gone across the country. It's one of the great things about the logo is the ability to recruit from coast to coast. And our staff's done a great job of developing those same relationships with parents and families and really got an opportunity to connect with them in June as they were able to get on campus for the first time.
Connections, relationships, families, parents, that's what matters. Connections and relationships. You see, you can't out-talent Alabama. You can't walk around the country and say, we're going to build a squad better than Alabama's by getting better players. Good luck. You can't do that in this league. Everybody has tried. You can't play football better than everyone. You can't bring in this exciting new offense that's going to teach Nick Saban a lesson. Kirby Smart, Dan Mullen, good luck. But you can out-relationship them. You can do what others won't do. I've been to many SEC media days. Each coach and the 2 or 3 players that go every year are assigned a very tight schedule. It's usually their opening press conference in the main room. Then they have to go to the electronic media room. Then they have to go do a couple of interviews for CBS. Then they have to do a couple of interviews for ESPN. Then they have to go do a Paul Feinbaum interview. Then they got to go do a Marty and McGee interview. And then they're done. And sometimes coaches make their way downstairs to Radio Row, and they do a couple of interviews. Nick Saban will go on in Birmingham, and he used to go on with us because he and Floyd were good buddies. And then they hightail it on out of there on the plane going home. And I can't tell you how many times, whether it was Chase or Julian Council or whomever else was there with us that was rounding up players and coaches that would be told by PR folks, oh, they can't. They got too much time. They can't. One year I got a one-on-one with Mark Stoops. I thought he was great. The next year Kentucky told me we got a one-on-one with Mark Stoops, and then we didn't. Coach Stoops didn't have the time for us. Do you know what I interpreted that as, Caroline?
What?
Coach Stoops didn't have the time for Nashville. It's not us. It's going on in Nashville. So I looked at Josh Heupel at SEC Media Days. Everyone's going to hear the speech. Everybody's going to hear the buzzwords. You know, that power, that logo recruits coast to coast. Okay. We're all going to hear that. But I have Chase McCabe, who's down there courtesy of our friends at Volunteer Hose and Gasket. I gave Chase a task today. I said, I want you to watch over Josh Heupel like a hawk. And I want you to tell me, does he do more than he's required to do? Again, the SEC requires you to do X, Y, Z. You got to do this interview over there, do that interview over there. Marty and McGee, CBS, Paul Feinbaum, SEC Network, ESPN, Sports Center, whatever. Does he do more? Because we are talking about relationships, right? It is SEC Media Day. Look, I get it. Most coaches rather be coaching. Whether that's on the football field telling somebody how to block, or whether that's recruiting and trying to chase around a 16-year-old. They'd rather do that than talk with the big guy from Fayetteville, Arkansas, who's going to ask a stupid question. I get it. But I told an SEC coach one time, I said, I don't understand all these coaches that go to these media days and they try to act like they're Nick Saban. Like they're so busy that they don't have time for anything other than what the schedule permits. And God forbid if this TV reporter from Shreveport, Louisiana wants to ask me a question, I cannot do it. Send the PR guards out there. Send the PR guards to go stop them. And we can have that. And I'm like, don't you think it's a good idea to build relationships with people? Again, Josh Heupel said, one of the most important things is relationship building. You know what Chase McCabe told me as I had him watch to see if Josh Heupel used Media Day to his advantage to get to know people? Here's what Chase told me. Quote, he's doing extra. What I'm noticing with Heupel on Radio Row, he's not just sitting down and doing an interview. He's shooting the breeze. He's talking off the air, and he's getting to know who he's with. That's a big deal. That is how you win SEC Media Days. I was talking to a coach of a program that's not a big-time program, but recognizable enough. And I said to him about their conference media day, it's SEC Media Days. I said, you know, Atlanta has a lot of players in it, and most of those guys already know about Nick Saban at Alabama. They already know about Ed Orgeron at LSU. They certainly know about Kirby Smart at Georgia. Do they know about you? Do the people in Atlanta know about Josh Heupel? Do the people in Jacksonville, again, Florida, a state that is just loaded with talent, do they know about Josh Heupel? Now, granted, he was at UCF, so I'm sure he knows the area pretty well. But this is free advertising. You know, all the commercials we play on the Stillman and Company show, those aren't free. But if Josh Heupel hops on with Chase, and I think our audience kind of speaks for itself, That's free advertising. And not only is it free advertising to go on these radio shows and to do these television hits, but you never know what high school coach is going to be listening, what parent of a recruit is going to be listening, and is going to be driving around in Atlanta with Kirby Smart on speed dial and all of a sudden think to themselves, you know, that Josh Heupel seems like a smart guy. He seems like a good guy. And you also don't know about the relationship with the hosts. I'll say this. If Mark Stoops reached out to me on a random Wednesday during the Titan season when something important was going on, I'm not putting him on the show. We have 4 hours to do, and that's just not enough time because, quite frankly, not enough people here care about Mark Stoops. A lot more care about what Mike Vrabel had to say at practice. But if you have a relationship with somebody, and say Mark Stoops, or say Lane Kiffin, or say Mike Leach, say they're looking to get that player, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, they're looking to get that player. You know, these assistant coaches talk to these recruits. Oh, hey, our coach is going on the radio in Atlanta today. You should listen. You get to know the hosts. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I try to be as non-biased as possible when it comes to talking about the teams you like and you care about. The Titans, the Vols, the Preds, Vandy, the rest of the SEC. But deep down inside, sometimes we have soft spots for people. Derek Mason lived in my neighborhood, the Vanderbilt coach. I was sad to see him go. Not because I thought he was the greatest coach in the world, because I thought he was a good guy. I mean, this is the opportunity for a coach at media days. And I get it. Coaches don't like the media. That's fine. But you already got to be there. And all these stations and all these TV stations and all these electronic writers, you never know who the next Paul Feinbaum's going to be, who the next Colin Cowherd's going to be, who the next Ahmad Rashad is going to be. You never know. And that's why I always look at these coaches and I always look at media days and I always think, I don't care what you say. What do you do? Do you use this to your advantage? I hear college coaches all the time talk about every day you got to make the most out of it. Well, here you are in Birmingham and you've got all these people from across the southeastern footprint that would just be dying to get an interview with a coach. Are you going to treat them with respect? Or are you going to leave people walking away, have the PR goon say, sorry, Coach Smart can't do that today, and have people say, kind of a jerk. Listening to Chase talk about Josh Heupel, sounds like he gets it. Josh Heupel's got a lot of catching up to do. He's got a lot of work to do to get people to know who he is and what he's about at Tennessee. They're going to stink this year. We already know it. He knows it. You know it. I know it. 5 wins is probably a pipe dream, but you know what? We're going to watch. But it's all about building the relationships. You never know when those relationships in life will come out of the woodwork to help you, and you will be stunned by them at certain points in time. Caroline, you've worked with Jason Fitz at ESPN. Mm-hmm. You got to know him pretty well producing his digital shows. Did you ever think that the program director of this radio station would be reaching out to Fitz to talk about you, perhaps at 23 years old, now 24, happy birthday.
Thank you.
That you could perhaps be a part of this radio show? Did you ever think the fact that I work with Fitz one day is going to help me land a decent gig?
For one day, no. But working with Fitz for a couple years, getting to know Fitz on a personal level, being there for him professionally and him being there for me professionally and personally as well, that's what did it.
All I know is this. When Ryan told me, hey, I want you to meet Caroline Fenton, I said, what do we know about her? What's it? And he said, I talked to Fitz. And Fitz said that she is absolutely a slam dunk.
Fitzy's the best.
You never know. And that's why recruiting, future employment opportunities, your current employment opportunity. I am telling you, if you're a coach. So to hear Chase McCabe, who I told Chase, I need you to stalk Josh Heupel. I need you to see what he does Does he just want to talk to Paul Feinbaum, or does he want to talk to everybody? And to have Chase tell me that he is going on Radio Row, doing the extra, talking to radio stations in the South, getting to know the media that he's working with, I think that's a big deal. And I think that, to me, is the highlight of SEC Media Days. That is using it to your advantage. Everybody talks a big game. Everybody says, we're going to work the hardest. We're going to make great relationships. We're going to, yes. But do you do it? Do you do it? Chad Morris, I'll give you an example. I'm not sure I should share this, but I'm going to. Chad Morris at Arkansas. Boy, was he a terrible coach. Chad Morris's SID, the PR director, essentially, of Arkansas football, is a guy by the name of Kyle Parkinson. Max, you know Kyle Parkinson.
Yep.
Used to be at Vanderbilt. Kyle Parkinson came up to us in 2018 at SEC Media Days and said, I'm going to try to get Coach Morris on with you guys. Here we are in Atlanta at SEC Media Days. He's an SEC coach. I don't think anybody here cares about Arkansas. But if Chad Morris is going to sit down, we're going to talk to Chad Morris. Then Chad Morris didn't have time. Oh, I'm sorry, Coach Morris didn't have time for us. And I thought to myself, what a bum. Chad Morris doesn't have time for us, but Nick Saban had time for us. What's that mean? No offense to Chad Morris, and this probably didn't even reach his desk. It's probably Kyle Parkinson, the PR guy. But the truth is, it's a reflection of you. And here I am in Nashville. Last time I checked, Jared and the GM at the time, pretty powerful show, pretty popular show in Nashville. Last time I checked, there's a lot of good football players who come from Middle Tennessee. And here we are with an opportunity for Chad Morris to come on, get to know us, and get to sell people on his vision at Arkansas. But he was too busy. That's why I'm not surprised when I see Chad Morris lose every game by 55 points. And I certainly didn't shed a tear for him.
I don't think there's necessarily a correlation between an interview at SEC Media Days and your production on the football field.
No, but I think there's a correlation between you getting to know the people that you're going to be around and you embracing it.
100%.
Because I think that's that way with high school coaches. Mm-hmm. I think it's that way with recruits' parents. I think it's that way with your local media. I think it's that way with your national media. A lot of people only want to talk to the national guys, because that's going to get the most viewership. But I'll say this. I think there are a lot of people. Bill Belichick came on our show one time before the Titans played the Patriots, and obviously Floyd and Bill go back. And Bill Belichick comes on the show. And I remember people texting him to the text line and calling him the show saying, I thought it was so awesome to have Coach Belichick on our station in our town. That's a big deal to people. That matters. And you never know who's listening. If you are an SEC coach, you don't know what high school coach is listening. It could be somebody out in Donaldson who all of a sudden has the next Golden Tate on their team. You don't know. In fact, I will say this. Philip Fulmer, I think, had his opportunity to keep his job at Tennessee as the head coach. And in the class of 2008, Randall Cobb at Alcoa went to Kentucky. And Barrett Jones from Memphis and Dante Hightower from Nashville went to Alabama. And I think if he gets those three players, I think Fulmer is still coaching at Tennessee. But he didn't. You never know. And so I always tell people, if you got to be there, I understand not spending all day. I understand not spending all day at Radio Row at SEC Media Days and spending all day, acquiescing to everybody. But if you already have to be there, shouldn't you make the most of it? So when I hear Chase talking about what Josh Heupel has been doing today, I think that's a great sign that he is willing to get out and sell the Tennessee brand. Jeremy Pruitt used to tell us he'd sell the Tennessee brand. But guess what? He never did an interview he didn't have to do. That's not good. And when it hits the fan, who's going to be there to defend you? So I will say this to me. Forget about what he said in his speech. I think Josh Heupel won SEC Media Days, just from what Chase is telling me about the relationships he's making, about shooting the breeze off the air with these people. I think he is winning SEC Media Days. 615-737-1025. Hang on to that reaction. I'll get your thoughts on this as well. 615-737-1025. Your thoughts, texts, calls, etc. Josh Heupel. Maybe you heard something you liked, but again, what he did off the camera today, that matters to me more than what he did on the camera. 615-737-1025. Plus something that Josh Heupel, honestly, I think he maybe knows better, but you cannot sell this at the University of Tennessee. We'll get to that next. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman & Company. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game, delivered by TriStar Moving and streaming on the Game Nashville app, YouTube, and Periscope.
It's going to take a lot of different forms. It's the way that we communicate inside of our building. Every interaction that we have with players, with staff, with janitors, it doesn't matter who it is, creating and harnessing energy inside of our building. I think that's a really important thing that we've tried to build with our VFLs too, is harnessing that energy and creating positive momentum that surrounds our program where our kids feel that every single day. It's the way that we interact with them outside of the game. The things that I've talked about and that we've done with our players in the 5.5 months that we've been here. As we move forward, it may be different opportunities as far as what the uniform looks like when you run out on the field. Man, look good, feel good, play good. And we want to create a positive player experience from the moment that they step on campus until they're done, but have a long-term relationship with them that lasts forever.
It's all about relationships. It's all about how you treat people. And today, Josh Heupel at SEC Media Days answered all the questions. I mean, it's fine. They're all boring. They're all the same. But as I told Chase McCabe today, who's down there courtesy of Volunteer Hose and Gasket, covering it for us and might sit down with Heupel's going to sit down with Greg Sankey. We'll have Chase with Greg Sankey. But I said, I want you to watch Heupel because I want you to see how he interacts with the people. Not the Feinbaums, not the Jordan Rodgers, not the Greg McElroys. I want to see how he interacts with the people. Because that's important. It's free advertising to have a radio host in Birmingham like you. It's free advertising. And Chase says he is shooting the breeze with the guys off the air. He's getting to know people. To me, that's how you win SEC Media Days when you're a coach that a lot of people just quite frankly don't know a lot about. So forget about all the we're going to go beat them talk. I was very impressed with what Chase reported to me about the interactions that Josh Heupel has had since he's been down there in Birmingham.
And I also think that every coach and every program goes into SEC Media Days with a different goal because Josh Heupel's goal is way different than Nick Saban's. Nick Saban can go up there and say whatever the heck he wants, and it's going to be okay. You're still going to get recruits to go to Alabama, and Alabama will still have a winning season. Josh Heupel had to take advantage of this opportunity because he's not only trying to rebrand the Tennessee football program, hopefully for the better, he's also trying to brand himself and his players. Because for a lot of people, this is the first time they've even heard Josh Heupel speak words out of their mouths. So that was Josh Heupel's goal, I believe, going into this SEC Media Days appearance, just based off of his remarks, was that he was trying to sell that he appreciates this program, he sees the potential in this program, and he's going to do what he can do to get the program to the point that it used to be, because that is something that I don't believe Jeremy Pruitt did.
You got to sell yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. You don't just get up there at that main podium and have it run on the SEC network and say, all right, guys, see ya. Mm-hmm. You got to sell yourself, and it's got to be personal. You got to feel it. I read Nick Saban's unauthorized biography that he took issue with, saying that, one day he'll write an authorized book when everything's all said and done that'll have the truth in it. But I read the book anyways, and there's a very interesting story about Floyd in there, but that's neither here nor there. So I read the book, and one of the things that Saban did was the second that he got to LSU, where, you know this because you obviously went to LSU, mm-hmm. but, there are so many players in the state of Louisiana. Like, there are so many great players. Everybody who's got a name like Tyrann Mathieu or like Leonard Fournette or anything, they're usually from LS. They're from Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And Saban said, we got to keep these kids here. Like, we have got to keep these kids here. So what did he do? He got to know every high school coach in the state of Louisiana. When he went to Alabama, he got to know every high school coach in the state of Alabama. And Floyd and I were talking one time. I don't know if this was on air or off the air. He goes, do you know how much that is when every high school coach has your phone number and can call you whenever they want? And how many times you're probably going to get a call from somebody who's trying to impress the people that they're with to be like, hey, watch this, I'm so cool. I'll call Coach Saban. Hey, Coach, it's so-and-so, coach at Eastern Lincoln High School. Like, how you doing, Coach? Good, Coach, I was just wondering, we were talking about it. And, like, how Saban's got to be on the whole time. You got to be on the whole time. Mm-hmm. But Saban's willing to do it. You got to be willing to do it. Vince Ferrara, WNML in Knoxville, was on with Darren Donick and Chase. They asked him about the relationship element of it, just to show you that Heupel may not be a great coach. I have no idea. But at least he's doing the work on the relationship front. Here's what he said.
Really cool, great shot for those of us that call high school football games to learn about all the teams and everything else, get those kids exposure. It's awesome. So I interviewed a bunch of coaches, and I talked to a couple, including one high school coach that told me that Josh Heupel, he contacted him within days after getting the job, and that he didn't have any players. He said, I still don't. But he contacted me. We've texted a bunch of times. We talked on the phone, and he just really was impressed by how much Key and then later his staff have contacted them and built their relationships. This is a program that's produced players in the past, but they don't have any D1 guys right now, any guys for UT, as he admitted. That is so important. That's something that Saban has done and other high-level players have done in building those relationships. If you wait until a school has a player and they hear from you for the first time 3 years into your tenure when they first want a player, you got too late.
I think that's exactly what you want to hear. Exactly. Again, I don't know if Josh Heupel can coach or not. I mean, I know there have been a lot of coaches that are glad handers that aren't good coaches. But to me, that is exactly how you have to sell that Tennessee brand. So I just think that so far from what I've heard, because I'm not there, Chase is. We'll chat with Chase a little bit. So far from what I've heard, I feel like SEC Media Days was a success for Josh Heupel. Now, somebody texted me who I would consider to be in the know. Somebody texted me and said, and I guess this is my own personal text line, not the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, but they said, how many radio interviews are enough? Does it make sense for the Arkansas coach to do radio with Columbia, South Carolina, or to do Little Rock, Memphis, New Orleans, and St. Louis? What is the final number? And here's what I said to that person back. If I coached in the SEC, now there's a lot of things I wouldn't know about coaching in the SEC. I think we're going to probably all agree on that. But if I coached in the SEC, I would tell my PR people that if I'm going in the morning, that afternoon, I'm doing every radio station that wants to have me. And I know look, I've been there before. There are these tiny little podunk stations out of nowhere that are like, it's a 99.1 The Buzz out here in West Haven, Lafayette, state of whatever.
I've been there. It's beautiful at the time of the year.
I'd do it. You do it because you just don't know. I'll give you an example. There's a station in Huntsville, Alabama, 8:30 a.m. The Ump. I don't even know if it still exists anymore. But a handful of years ago, their table was right next to our table. Their morning show guy was Cole Kubelik. And
heard of him.
And Cole Kubelik was doing his morning show, and I think I was doing the mid-morning show. That's actually where I got to know Cole Kubelik. And I didn't know that 5-6 years later, I'd be at a Jay Alexander's with him and Tom Hart and Ed Orgeron and Jordan Rogers. I didn't know that. But you never know. I got to know this Cole Kubelik guy. He played offensive line at Auburn. He's pretty good. I was like, hey, you know what? Come on my show sometime. He comes on the show. I'm like, he's pretty good. Like, he's pretty good at talking about football. This guy knows college football inside and out. Well, don't you think it's important to get to know these guys? I mean, everybody who's ever made it successfully in anything knows the people that are only interested in them when they're on top. But it's the people that have always been there. Like, that's a big deal to me. So if I coach in the SEC, I'd be doing all of them. I'd be meeting people. I'd be taking pictures with them. I'd be high five. I'd be doing all of it because you never know. You never know. We were talking about this yesterday. I had somebody who interned for me in Louisville who is now out in Los Angeles killing it with the Ringer. Like, you never know. So that's just my approach to it.
And I think another key part of that as well is that the Southeast and the Southeastern Conference both, it's a big area, it's a big conference, it's really just a small network of people. So you can be from Columbia, South Carolina and be interested to go to Dan Mullen's program in Gainesville. You can be from Louisiana and go to Alabama. So if you're watching SEC Media Days, if you're a player, if I'm a parent of a player and my child, myself as a player, wants to play college football, then I'm going to be listening in whatever city I live in. I'm going to be listening in. And if I hear Josh Heupel's voice talking about his vision for the Tennessee Volunteers, talking about what he wants to build with that program, then I'll be interested. So there are important people in West Haven, Lafayette, Georgia.
Yep. I mean, yes. At the University of Tennessee, let's be honest, you're starting a brand new business. You are not Gino Auriemma. You are starting a brand new business from scratch. You can't act like you're too cool for it. And apparently, Chase, who's there, is telling us that Josh Heupel isn't. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your reaction on this as well. 615-737-1025. 1025, the game's coverage of SEC Media Days, is brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket, your equipment supplier in Nashville, including gaskets, hoses, hose fittings, seals, packings, joints, gauges, fire protection, cups, belting, and more. If you need it, they've got it. Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. Plus, the one thing, honestly, that I feel like is not very well. The one thing that I feel like maybe the Vols fans need to get over a little bit, and I hope Heupel realizes that this is really not a big deal. We'll discuss that next. Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
you look at what we've been able to do in our track record as a staff at the previous 2 stops at UCF and at Missouri, top 5 in basically every offensive category the last 3 years. The 2 years previous to that, while we were at Missouri, led the league in total offense. This is a quarterback-friendly offense that's going to allow us to play and apply pressure to defenses every single Saturday that we step on the football field. And obviously we understand that in this league, the line of scrimmage is extremely important too, but I think the tempo on the offensive side of the ball gives us the ability to create an advantage in that aspect. We got to continue to recruit and develop big, large people up front that will change the line of scrimmage as we continue to play. And we got a great amount of guys that are coming back on both sides of the line of scrimmage, offensively and defensively, from last year's football team that have an opportunity to be a strength for us.
I've seen Tennessee's offensive line last year, and I know Wanye Morris is gone. I don't feel good about their chances this year against Georgia and Florida. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure I feel good about their chances against South Carolina. Like, let's be real when we look at the Vols.
Kentucky, Alabama. People are pretty high in Kentucky this year. Cole Cube put Kentucky finishing second behind Georgia in his SEC East standings.
Would not surprise me, though. I think Florida. I think Florida.
I thought it would be Georgia, Florida, then Kentucky.
Let's see what
but
Dan Mullen's got up his sleeve. Caroline, do you think Vol fans, after today, listening to Josh Heupel, I told you what Josh Heupel's done off the, behind the scenes is more important to me about media days than what they actually say. Do you think Vol fans, though, feel any better about Heupel after how he performed at SEC media days? Because the one thing I'll say is this. There's 2 things that I truly believe about the Vol fan base and this current situation. First off, I think they feel like they've kind of sat this one out. The just holding their breath or losing their minds over every little move, because they did that and they got Jeremy Pruitt. And they lost their mind in a good way over every little move. Jeremy Pruitt, oh, God, he's just the best. He's the next Nick Saban. Oh, my goodness. Oh, yes. And I think there's a part of me that feels deep down inside. This is just me. I think there's a part of me that feels as if they look at it like, yeah, we put all our chips in on that guy and it busted. So, we just kind of see where this goes. And then I hear Greg McElroy and Jordan Rodgers on TV talking about got to score points in the SEC. It's an offensive league. I'm like, okay, 2 quarterbacks, think that's the case. I think defense is important. Do you feel better about Heupel today, or the same, or worse, or how do you feel?
Me personally, I do feel better, because hearing the things that Josh Heupel was saying, I think that is those are the important things to start building. That is what builds a foundation. Relationships, family, things like that. That is what builds a foundation, and also his vision for the future. They want they want a physical offense. So me personally, yes, I do feel a bit better about Josh Heupel. However, I kind of view, I have had a lot of experience with Tennessee fans in my day. I kind of view Tennessee fans having 2 different categories. One, they're out on it. They don't care. We're sick of these coaching turnover. We'll believe you when we see the results on the field. The other group, they believe everything. They drink the Kool-Aid. Josh Heupel says that we can beat Georgia, and we believe him.
And no disrespect to the Tennessee media, but they have a fanboy media. They have a fanboy media in Knoxville that covers them. That's like drinking the Kool-Aid on everything. Mm-hmm. And then when the tide turns a little bit, once it goes a little bit, the daggers of their teeth come out.
Yes.
And they sink right in. I saw it happen to Butch Jones. I mean, oh yeah, Brick by Brick, he's our guy. Look at the recruiting. Yeah, GoVols.com. Yeah. And then it's just sunk right into the teeth. And, like John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel, I think he's pretty good. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's all sunshine and rainbows, and then it immediately goes right to storm clouds and just pit bull daggers. But I think this year they've kind of been more just kind of like, well, we'll see. I don't think they were really sold on Heupel when they hired him.
I don't think anyone was super excited about the Heupel hire, and I feel like my general feeling about the Tennessee football program and the fans and as a whole, I think are all kind of leaning toward that. All right, We've believed a coach before. We've believed a coach again. Nothing came of it. So you can say what you want to say and you can say the right things, but until we see production on the field, until we see a winning season, we don't believe you.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Speaking of SEC Media Days, Chase McCabe is there thanks to Volunteer Hose and Gasket. We will hear later from Alante Taylor of the Tennessee Volunteers, plus who sat down one-on-one with Chase, and Greg Sankey, SEC Commissioner, will sit down with Chase at 5 o'clock. And I told Chase, I said, ask him now, because Sankey's one of the most important people in college athletics. I said, ask him now with this expanded playoff, is Nashville going to be in play? Like, are we in play for a college football playoff game? You know, I hate the 12-team playoff, but I don't mind the idea of Nissan Stadium and or the transparent, transatlantic, trans Music City Bowl. I don't have a problem with that being, maybe one of these playoff games. Who knows? So Chase will sit down with Greg Sankey. We'll see. Stillman and Company's delivered by TriStar Moving. We'll hit the headlines with Caroline coming up next. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. So yesterday, I lost my mind on the show when I found out that Philip Myers, we now know that's how his name is pronounced.
It is indeed Philip. We were putting a little bit too much spice into it.
Yes. Philip Myers, we now learned that his name is Philip Myers, the new defenseman for the Predators. I'll be honest with you, do third pair defenseman on your own time. But I was shocked about him being given number 6. I mean, how can you give him Shea Weber's number? Give him number 6. How could you do that? Now, apparently he had his media availability day and said it was like his youth hockey number.
In honor of his dad, according to Adam Vingan. He said, I wore it as a kid in honor of my dad. I have no problem with that.
I have no problem with you wanting
sweet.
number 6. I have no problem with there being a meaning for number 6. Shea Weber's number. I had a meltdown yesterday on air about it, and it was funny listening to Robbie and Joe go back and forth this morning because Joe's like, I can't believe people would care about this. And Robbie's like, I thought they were going to retire that number. And it gets me because Joe wasn't really here during the Shea Weber era. You know, Joe got here at the very end of Weber's last season. Mm-hmm. And so Joe doesn't remember what it was like. I mean, that organization pushed Shea Weber more than anybody I have ever seen. I mean, he was the crown jewel. He and Pekka were Steve McNair and Eddie George, and they broke it up, not Weber. They broke it up. And I was just a little surprised by that, which I'm sure we'll jump into here at some point. But it's time now for Headlines with Caroline.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman and Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk,
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Death, taxes, Aaron Rodgers drama in the offseason. So according to Adam Schefter, who reported today that Aaron Rodgers has declined a contract extension with the Green Bay Packers. The Packers offered him a 2-year contract extension that would have made him the highest paid player in the NFL, and it would tie him to the Packers for the next 5 years. So just adding 2 years on to the rest of his 3-year contract that he currently has signed, and he declined.
Who do you think leaked the story? Do you think Aaron leaked the story, or do you think the Packers leaked the story? You know, it's interesting that it's coming from Schefter because that can't be traced, right?
Right.
Like, if it comes from the NFL Network, you know it was the team.
Right.
If it comes from, you know, like a random beat writer in Green Bay, it probably came from Aaron. So, you know, David Dunn, Aaron's agent, is a been-there, done-that veteran agent, so he's played the game. And if the Packers dial up Adam Schefter, they know it can't be traced. You think it came from Aaron. Why?
Because I think Aaron likes to play this game. Like, look, you want to make me the highest paid player in the NFL, and I'm not going to sign this contract. I think the Packers, I don't think they want people to know that Aaron Rodgers declined a contract because the Packers want him back. Obviously, they're offering him a ton of money, and they have said publicly, if Aaron walks through this door, he's our quarterback. So I think the Packers may be feeling a little bit of like an ego hit when Aaron says, no, I'm not taking your money.
So I don't know.
I think Aaron likes to play this little drama game.
I don't know how to interpret this story until I know who leaked this story. Mm-hmm. And I can see it either way. I mean, I can see the Packers putting this story out there to be like, he is such a whiny crybaby that we offered him, we tried, so once he goes back and he doesn't show up for camp and he does his moaning and complaining, don't feel bad for him because we tried to give him what he wanted. I think I can see that coming from the Packers.
That's one side.
I can see Aaron putting it out there because Aaron is trying to set the tone of, this isn't about me being a whiny crybaby or wanting more security or wanting more money or wanting more anything. This is just simply, I don't want to be here anymore, and no matter what they do, I'm not coming back. You know, it's a message to everybody else. Mm-hmm. You know, is it that Aaron's a whiny crybaby, or is it that Aaron is truly not coming back to Green Bay? And until I know who leaked the story, I don't know how to feel about it. That having been said, it makes me think Aaron's not showing up next week.
And I think as well, a lot of people have been taking this story and interpreting it as, okay, now we know it's not about the money. Aaron Rodgers is not holding out for more money. It's never been about the money.
I think it's a little bit about the money.
Well, if it was about the money, then he would have accepted that contract.
But see, when I say it's about the money, I mean, I think him showing up is about the money. Because if he has to pay back $40 million, it's one thing for you not to pay me back any more money or pay me any more money. It's another thing for me to have to write a check
pay
to
you money.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is where I do think it's about the money. And, I mean, look, man, I feel like now Jordan Rodgers has been on TV enough that people know him pretty well. Mm-hmm. Like, I know him pretty well. Talked to him today. Talked to his brother today. As I've said many times with Aaron Rodgers, if there's drama between the brothers and Aaron, I know whose side I'm on because I know the brothers. Mm-hmm. And I think that if most people knew the brothers, they'd be on their side too. So this is how Aaron lives his life. I wouldn't live my life like this, but this is, I guess, how you make $1 bajillion and still be miserable every day. What's nice.
A little bit more NFL news. Per Tom Pelissero, Rams running back Cam Akers tore his Achilles while training today. He will be out of the entire 2021 season. So he's the easily the best running back on their roster in 2020. Rushed for 625 yards, 11 receptions for 123 yards, 3 touchdowns total. Not a crazy. You're not going to be the rookie of the year with those numbers, but I think the Rams were really expecting him to have a breakout year this year. So tough news for Cam Akers. But I mean, if you look at the rest of their running back room, you got Darrell Henderson, Raymond Calais, Jake Funk. It's not really any kind of names that you're like, that's fine, plug and play. So I wonder, are we going to see the Rams sign a free agent? You got Adrian Peterson, which, you got Duke Johnson, Dion Lewis, LaShawn McCoy, and Le'Veon Bell.
Well, I ain't taking Dion Lewis because he sucks. But let me say this. I think we all look at Jared Goff's career. Sean McVay pulled a David Poyle, right? He gave Jared Goff all that money and then immediately gave up everything in order to get rid of him.
Uh-huh.
And nobody's blaming McVay, even though they should. There is a very important element, in my opinion, to Jared Goff's career, and that is with Todd Gurley and without Todd Gurley. And I think there's an important element to Ryan Tannehill's career, without Derrick Henry, with Derrick Henry. And I think there's an important element to John Elway's career and his legacy of winning 2 Super Bowls, without Terrell Davis and with Terrell Davis. And I can go on and on. And I think this is a huge loss for Matthew Stafford because I believe Cam Akers is a number 1 running back, and they don't have one now. And maybe they can sign somebody, but the Rams notoriously never have cap space because they spend all their money on their wide receivers, their quarterback, and their defensive tackle, and Jalen Ramsey. You just don't have any money. I think they're paying 20-something million this year for Goff and Gurley, who aren't even there. I mean, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And this is terrible news for the Rams and terrible news for Akers. But I keep looking at this with Jared Goff. With Todd Gurley, you were willing to give him the most guaranteed money in the history of the NFL.
Right.
Without Todd Gurley, he's a bum. I'd be worried about Matthew Stafford without a running back, too, now.
And different quarterbacks, but still a huge hit. And also tough to see a guy who's so young. I mean, going into his second year into the NFL, that's rough. That's tough.
But take Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, all those guys, put them over here. And then think about every other quarterback in the league and take away the running game. Take away Dalvin Cook from Kirk Cousins. What do you have?
A dumpster fire.
Remember how bad the Cowboys were when Zeke got suspended? Like, take those guys away. And it is not pretty, and I worry about that for the Rams. What's next?
And also, selfishly, I wonder how the Titans look at this. I mean,
they do play them pretty early on Sunday Night Football. I did think about that when I saw this.
They are going on the road to L.A., so could be a good opportunity for the Titans on Sunday Night Football. Also, Texas A&M has struck a deal, so a fan site has partnered with 2 Aggie football players, running back Isaiah Spiller and safety Damani Richardson. This fan site, it is known as TexAgs.com.
Oh, we love TexAgs.
Do you love TexAgs?
Sure, Billy Lucci.
Okay, all right, respect. It's a big deal of a website. 32 million page views each month. It's a big deal. So they will be paying both Isaiah Spiller and Damani Richardson $10,000 each for exclusive feature interviews on their website. So another big development in the NIL.
TexAgs back in the day used to charter flights from College Station to road games and like sell memberships for people to get on those charter flights. So it was just like the experience of we're taking a charter flight here. Floyd was not easily impressed, I would say, by having people on. I mean, we'd go to SEC Media Days. We'd get Saban and Gary Danielson because Floyd coached Gary, and we'd get all these great guys. Billy Lucci, the creator of TexAgs, Floyd's son Sean went to A&M. And anyone, if you've ever met anyone that's ever gone to A&M, the one thing about them is that they absolutely love A&M.
It's a personality trait.
It is you went to, yes. You went to A&M? Okay, yeah, it's like, doing yoga.
Yeah.
So, Floyd, we got Billy Lucci on the show. And it was the least worried I was about getting it. The least I cared about getting a certain guest on. We got Billy Lucci on the show. And Floyd was like so pumped that we got Billy Lucci because his son is a big A&M fan and his son likes Billy Lucci. And I'm sitting here saying, like, dude, we're talking to Nick Saban. Like, what are you talking about? So, no, TexAgs has made a ton of money.
Yes.
Matt Jones has done something similar with Kentucky Sports Radio. And I just think that's – Nick Saban said their quarterback maybe getting paid close to 7 figures in name, image, and likeness. At Alabama, has never taken a snap.
Well, that's like Matt Corral, who it just came out that he is charging $10,000 per hour for any kind of media availability or commercial that you want to shoot with him, whatever it may be. $10,000 for an hour.
I think I'm going to start a website. Only CFB fans. Going to start my website. Only CFB fans.
And what exactly does that entail?
It's going to, hey, we'll have every name, image, and likeness player get as much money as they want. You want to see someone baking cookies? Here you go. Subscribe to Only CFB Fans. You think I get sued?
A little bit.
Yeah, maybe. Those are headlines with Caroline. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Boy, I'm mad about something. Woo, am I mad?
That's new.
Oh, I'm mad. And it proves the point that I make every time we talk about subjectivity in the NFL and the Titans. I'll explain next. Stillman and Company, it's ESPN 1025, The Game.
From the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's Stillman and Company. Delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. With Jared Stillman on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. So Delaney Walker, we have already talked about this. Delaney Walker over the weekend made people, I guess, mad. I said 20% of Titan fans. 20% were mad by his comments that he feels like you get overlooked when you play for the Titans, which I have no problem with. And I think if you're offended by it, I kind of think you're a little soft. I saw Kayla Anderson, News 2, put out there, and I like Kayla Anderson a lot, but I saw she said something along the lines of, well, you know, sometimes when you're upset about how you were let go, maybe you say some things you didn't really mean. I talked to Delaney yesterday. I can tell you this. Delaney meant it. Like, if Delaney said it, he means it, and I know Delaney well enough to know Delaney meant it. But that's neither here nor there. So Bill Barnwell, so I remember yesterday people got worked up about Delaney's comments. So ESPN has an article, NFL offensive weapons ranking for all 32 teams. Bill Barnwell picks the best and worst arsenals. So this is offensive weapons. So I'm thinking what? Wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think this counts quarterbacks. But so anywho, again, putting together the list. He says wide receivers are weighted more heavily than running backs or tight ends. Not everybody who is considered gets mentioned. Da-da-da-da. So guess where the Titans rank in this? And I'm not saying that they get disrespected by ranking where they rank, but where do you think the Titans? We've talked about this with the NFL offensive weapons. Now that Julio's in the mix, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, where would you rank the Titans?
Top 10 for sure.
Who would you rank first?
In offense?
Offensive weapons.
I think I look at it with like tiers. I think there's the first tier, and I think that's Green Bay, Tampa Bay, and Kansas City.
Okay. So I don't have a problem with that.
And then I have my second tier, and I would put Tennessee in there with Seattle, Cleveland, Baltimore, Buffalo.
So they put the Titans third. And this is where, and I don't have a problem with the Titans third. If I had to do it, I would go Tampa Bay 1, Kansas City 2, and then I'm with you. I think Seattle, I know Seattle doesn't have a running back, but they have a tight end.
Yeah.
I know that, for example, I know Green Bay has one receiver, but he's a really damn good receiver, and they've got a good running back. I think those Cleveland, I could see it. I think I'd lean towards the Titans over Cleveland because even though Cleveland's got more, the Titans probably have better, but whatever. But ESPN's list has Tampa Bay 1. So Godwin and Evans and Fournette and AB and Gronk. And yeah, that's fine. Number 2, the Dallas Cowboys.
What?
This is why Delaney Walker is right. Because Bill Barnwell, and I don't think Bill Barnwell's a honk, but he's got the Cowboys second. Now, let's throw out all the other teams for a second. So forget about Cleveland, forget about Green Bay, forget about Kansas City, forget about everybody else. Dallas has one, I think, number 2 receiver, Amari Cooper, a high draft pick, CeeDee Lamb, who didn't really break out as a rookie, Michael Gallup, a one-trick pony, deep threat kind of guy, but he's fine. And Ezekiel Elliott, a running back who is 3 years removed away from his peak, and every year gets fatter both in the wallet and, let's be real about Zeke, it looks like he's packed on a few. Now, they get Dak back, but again, this is offensive weaponry, and I don't think Dak's all that great to propel him ahead of Kansas City. So you've got CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Blake Jarwin.
Who's
okay,
that?
Their tight end, and Zeke. Who would you rather have? And I think I'm pretty unbiased when it comes to the Titans. You can have Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb, or A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Josh Reynolds. I don't think it's very close. I think the Titan receivers are way better than the Cowboy receivers. Now, who would you rather have, Derrick Henry or Ezekiel Elliott?
Derrick Henry.
I, again, don't think that's close. Not anymore. So all you've got is Dallas has Blake Jarwin, a mediocre tight end, and you've got Anthony Ferkser, who's a backup. So that's all you've got. That's the only difference where I would give Dallas a smidge of a check mark, and that's it.
Do you think they're bringing quarterbacks into the situation, though?
No, I do not. And even if they were, I still wouldn't put the Cowboys. You're going to put the Cowboys ahead of Kansas City if we're counting quarterbacks?
No.
Okay. So here we are. You're going to put them ahead of Green Bay? You're going to put them ahead of Seattle if we're counting quarterbacks? So when Delaney Walker says you get overlooked playing in Tennessee, it's not just the fact that the Titans themselves don't necessarily move the needle. It's that all these teams, especially Dallas, are going to get more attention because of their brand. This is the Cowboy brand. The Cowboys' weapons on offense are not better than Seattle's. They're not better than Green Bay's. Again, let's look at Green Bay. Green Bay's got a true number 1 receiver in Devontae Adams.
If not the best wide receiver in the league.
I don't think that Amari Cooper's a number one receiver, like a true ace. Mm-hmm. You know, like I don't think that. Julio, I think the jury's out on a little bit because we don't know how healthy he is, but the productivity for Julio, even when hurt last year, was that of a number one wide receiver.
But then apply that same logic to Ezekiel Elliott.
Sure.
He's not as old as Julio Jones, but like still same kind of thinking.
Yeah, and Zeke's kind of, you know, I mean, Zeke looks like he's gained weight. Like Zeke looked like he got his contract and is enjoying his contract. And I'm not one to body shame, but like we've seen Zeke with the cutoff jersey. Mm-hmm. We've seen Zeke in the past. We see Zeke now. I look at this and I think to myself, like Amari Cooper, because again, if we're talking offensive weaponry and Bill Barnwell is rating the wide receivers, is weighting wide receivers ahead of running backs. Let me ask you this, as a number one wide receiver, A.J. Brown or Amari Cooper?
A.J. Brown.
Julio Jones or Amari Cooper?
Julio Jones.
DK Metcalf or Amari Cooper?
DK Metcalf.
Devontae Adams or DK
Devontae
Metcalf?
Adams.
I mean, Devontae Adams or Amari Cooper. Like, Amari Cooper's fine. He's like, he's fine. He's a number one on your team, just like Juju Smith-Schuster is the number one on the Steelers. But Juju Smith-Schuster is not a number one wide receiver. So I look at this, and I think to myself, Delanie Walker was right. Like, Delanie Walker was right about how you get so overlooked. And he's right because at the end of the day, the Dallas Cowboys, once again, are pushed up ahead of the rankings. I mean, there are so many teams, when we're talking offensive weapons in the NFL, that I would rank ahead of the Cowboys. And again, what my ranking is, what your ranking is, I mean, I would go Tampa Bay 1. I would go Kansas City 2. And here's why I go Kansas City 2. Because I believe that Hill and Kelsey are two of the best 4 at their positions in the league, and that all the other pieces fit everything they do. They have 3 wide receivers that can sprint by you on any play. Well, that's important. They've got running backs out of the backfield that can catch the ball and do something with it. That's important in that offense. So I would go Kansas City 3. I would go Seattle or Green Bay 4. Green Bay's tough because you got the number one wide receiver, you got a decent tight end in Robert Tonyan, but you got a number one running back in Aaron Jones. So a number 1 and a number 1. Mm-hmm. Seattle's got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So you got number 1 and number 1. Mm-hmm. But I think I got to put the Titans ahead of Seattle because Seattle didn't have the running back the Titans have. So I think Titans at 3 is fine. But once I see Dallas at 2, it's hard for me to look at your list and say, yeah, that's a fair representation of what's going on in the NFL. Especially when Titan fans get mad that the Titans, that Delanie Walker said they get overlooked. And here comes Dallas at number 3 in the offensive arsenal rankings. That does not make any sense to me.
So is your beef here with Dallas being 2?
Yes.
And
because it is stupid.
And therefore, Dallas is always overhyped. Therefore, Delanie Walker was making some sense.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that so many times after the draft, because the Cowboys usually have a decent draft pick because they usually don't make it very deep in the playoffs. So they usually do end up getting, some sort of big name corner, some sort of big name wide receiver coming out of college. They usually get a decent pick and a decent showing out of the NFL draft. And I think that also clouds a lot of people's vision. For some teams that is the case, some teams that's not. Some people say, okay, we don't really care about who your draft pick is. For example, Jacksonville Jaguars. You had the number 1 pick. You got Trevor Lawrence. You're not going to be good this year. But I think with the Cowboys, people's vision gets clouded.
Every year there's conversations.
And people are going to have, but Dak is back.
Are the Cowboys,
so it changes everything.
Are the Cowboys Super Bowl contenders? Skip and Shannon debate next. Okay. All right. But again, once I see Dallas at 2 on your list, I mean, again, this goes back to the fact that other teams are appreciated more than the Titans based upon their popularity. Joe Rexrow texted me and said, Delanie blamed playing here for him not being in the Hall of Fame. He was embarrassingly wrong. That wasn't what I interpreted what Delaney said. Like, I don't think Delaney, when he doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, is going to say, well, I played on bad teams in Tennessee. I mean, I think he probably thinks it's part of the equation. But I think his point was, Steve McNair and Eddie George aren't in the Hall of Fame, and it's because they played in Tennessee. And I would say this, if Eddie George played on the Dallas Cowboys, Eddie George would be in the Hall of Fame. That doesn't mean that I think Eddie George should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just telling you, if Eddie George played on the Dallas Cowboys, I think he'd be in the Hall of Fame. And this is an example of that because everybody gets overrated when you're on the Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott has been an okay running back for the last 2 or 3 years, but we still treat him like he's elite because he's Ezekiel Elliott and he's got the star on his
it's the
helmet.
name.
It's the Cowboys. And you're on TV every week. The Cowboys are either playing every week. They're either playing 3:30 game of the week on Fox, unless it's one of those 3 times a year that CBS gets them, and CBS can't wait to send Tony Romo out to go do the game, or they're playing on Sunday Night Football, or they're playing on Monday Night Football, and like twice a year, the Cowboys play at noon. And this is an example of that. So when everybody sits there and hears those comments or whatever, just think the ESPN rankings for offensive weapons came out and they put the Dallas Cowboys at 2.
And to put this in a college perspective, the Dallas Cowboys are the Texas Longhorns or USC. It doesn't matter how they're performing.
Although I'll say this, though. And now you worked at ESPN, I didn't. Mm-hmm. But, I don't feel like the Texas Longhorns, I think that they thought this thing where, you can put Texas on whenever you want and everybody will watch it. I don't think America watches when you put Texas on if they're not worth watching.
But the fact that people even think that and the fact that Texas gets those slots.
How many primetime games, though, does Texas really get? I hear what you're saying.
They have their own network.
Yeah, but nobody watches it. Nobody outside of Dallas. The Cowboys, if the Cowboys had their own network, they would not be allowed to play their games on that network because the real networks that pay the billions of dollars, they want the Cowboys on there.
Games.
Whereas with Texas, they play on ABC and ESPN and whatever, but as far as, a Texas football game mattering, we'll all watch a Dallas 3:30 game. When Dallas plays the Eagles and the Titans played at noon, we'll all watch the Dallas game. I don't feel that way about Texas football. I don't think there's any college football team, honestly, that moves that needle. Maybe it's Ohio State. Maybe it used to be Notre Dame. But I don't think there's the Dallas Cowboys in sports are a brand all by themselves. The Lakers don't have that kind of branding. The Yankees,
I don't know,
probably do. No, the Lakers don't. You cannot put a Laker game on when they're not good and expect people to watch. You put a Cowboy game on when people aren't good and people will watch.
But in terms of the brand, the Lakers are one of the strongest brands in all of sports.
Yeah, but they're not the Cowboys. The Lakers do not sit in the same realm. To me, the Lakers, the Knicks, the Bulls, those teams are all kind of similar. The Lakers and Celtics, the Lakers are kind of above, maybe just a little bit, but you put a great player on one of those teams and it'll be the talk of anything.
Right.
But if the Lakers are terrible, they're not going to be on prime time to where all of America can watch it and will watch it. Whereas the Dallas Cowboys can be terrible, and they will still play that game on Sunday Night Football. They played a Sunday Night Football game last year where the 2 starting quarterbacks, I forget who, you remember what I'm talking about? They played the Eagles, and neither team had a starting quarterback.
Yes.
And there was a guy who was because of COVID protocols, you can't bring in a new quarterback. So he was the practice squad guy who was a backup in college, and he's now starting on Sunday Night Football for the Cowboys. And I bet that game rated higher than when they put some bum team on. That's the Cowboys. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Joe's mad. So how should they rank the offensive weaponry? Where should the Titans go? We'll get to your reaction as well. Stillman and Company live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com, right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Let me tell all the folks out there, speaking of Joe Rexrode, tomorrow is your next chance to participate in the Nashville SC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores a goal in the game at Columbus tomorrow night, you win a prize pack and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Call in tomorrow at 9:45. during Robbie and Rex Road. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
I want to win a Super Bowl. Honestly, I feel like that helps you in your status as you retire in this game, and it's sad that that's something that you got to have to be recognized sometimes. And again, me being in Tennessee, I hate to say this, that hurts my value in any type of awards or accolades, because I did play in Tennessee. And you can look at some of the greats like Eddie George, Steve McNair, and them guys just not getting them coached yet. And it's because they didn't win a Super Bowl and they played in Tennessee. So I look at it, if I can win a Super Bowl, maybe that'll help me, and so you can go from there.
So Joe Rexrode's mad about the Delaney Walker comments. Not so much the Delaney Walker comments, so much my take on it. He said, listen again. He was asked why play more. And now you say his career is Hall of Fame if he played in Dallas? You are way smarter than this. My God. I don't think Delaney Walker's a Hall of Famer. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer if he played in Dallas.
No.
I think Eddie George is a Hall of Famer. I think Eddie's career is Hall of Fame. I think Eddie George is a Hall of Famer. I think Derek Mason is a Hall of Famer if they played for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm just saying. I think they are Hall of Famers if they played for the Dallas Cowboys, because Dallas gets overrated that much. And again, Dallas, so much extra. Dallas can be on Hard Knocks this year. Dallas is on TV. Let's pull up the Cowboys schedule and let's see how many games that the Dallas Cowboys play at noon on Sunday, because I think you would be shocked. I bet it's 2. I'm going to go with 2.
Noon?
Hold on, let me see. Are these preseason games? These look like preseason games. Okay, here you go. Regular season, 7:20 primetime with the Bucks. Week 2, 3:25 at the Chargers. Week 3, prime time with the Eagles. Week 4, noon with the Panthers. So you got one. Week 5, prime time, 3:25 with Dallas. Week 6, 3:25 at New England.
With New York Giants.
Yeah. Did I say with
Dallas?
Oh, yeah, with the Giants. Week 6, 3:25 with the Patriots. I bet Tony Romo will be calling that game. Week 8, primetime Sunday Night Football at the Vikings. Week 9, second noon start with the Broncos. Week 10, 3 noon starts with the Falcons. 3:25 with the Chiefs. 3:30 with the Raiders. Primetime with the Saints. Noon on December 12th with the Washington football team. Noon week 15 with the Giants. So you got 5, and then they're on Sunday Night Football. I mean, like.
And then end the season with 2 noon games.
Well, so that last noon game, I think every game that is in the Eastern time zone is ranked for noon, and then if it's got a playoff implication, they move it to 3:30, or they move it to, those are all. But again, like the Dallas Cowboys are on TV more. They're perpetually overrated. Last year, and I think I've told this story now a couple of times, but last year, the ESPN FPI, these analytics that are just so much smarter than you, the FPI said that the Dallas Cowboys were better than the Titans in 2020 before the start of the season. And Fitz came on the show, and this was during COVID when there wasn't, the shutdowns, when there wasn't a lot to talk about. And I raked Fitz to the coals over ESPN's FPI. These unquestionable, do not question these rankings. I just raked him to the coals about how ridiculous that putting the Dallas Cowboys into the Titans was. So Fitz, to his credit, reached out to ESPN's Stats and Info and asked how they can have the FPI for the Cowboys higher than the Titans. And it had to do with the Vegas win-loss total. And I've always said the win-loss total with the Cowboys is always overrated because there are more Cowboy fans than there are of any other team. And people are going to go bet the Cowboys because they love the Cowboys and they believe this is their year and they're going to go bet the Cowboys and that's going to raise the number. And here's Bill Barnwell's rankings, and they have the Cowboys' offensive weaponry with Amari Cooper at 2, ahead of Kansas City, ahead of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, ahead of Seattle, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, ahead of Green Bay, Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, ahead of the Titans with Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and Derrick Henry. Get out of here. Cowboys are perpetually overrated. Let's go to your phone, 615-737-1025. Text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Caroline, what do you have?
One texter checks in and says, Eddie George was a Cowboy doofus.
Yeah. So when Eddie George was good, there is a difference between playing on the Dallas Cowboys and playing on a team who practices in Bellevue and flies and plays in Memphis. I think there's a little bit of a difference there.
Yes, absolutely.
What else we got?
Another texter texted in and said, what made you talent evaluators? This was done by people who know the game and know talent. Don't put someone down because it doesn't match what you think. I'm not putting down Bill Barnwell personally. I'm not a talent scout. I have never claimed to be, but I have eyes. I watch games. I don't feel like I need to be a talent evaluator to know that Amari Cooper isn't one of the best offensive weapons in the NFL.
Besides, I'm a talk radio host. I can just say whatever I want. Like, this is like politics. The highest rated shows in America. Rachel Maddow's never been president before. Like, just FYI to everybody out there. Like, Tucker Carlson, never been president. You get to vote for president, don't you? What makes you a presidential evaluator? You ever been president? I guess not. Well, same thing. What's next?
Another texter, Matt from Camden texts in and says, if you think Eddie George would have been a Hall of Famer if he played for the Cowboys, then Tony Romo should have been a Hall of Famer by that logic. And Tony Romo is not a Hall of Famer, and it's not even close.
So I think Eddie George was a much better player than Tony Romo. I mean, at no point in Tony Romo's career was he considered the best quarterback in the NFL. Mm-hmm. At no point in Tony Romo's career was he considered one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Eddie George is an all-pro. Like, Eddie George got the Titans to the Super Bowl. Tony Romo won one playoff game, and it was because the refs missed pass interference. And then the next week, everybody cried because Des Bryant dropped the football. Like, I'm sorry, Tony Romo and Matthew Stafford are going to be totally remembered differently, I believe. And I think Romo is going to be remembered more than Stafford because Romo plays at 325 on TV every week, and Stafford played in Detroit. But there's no doubt in my mind Stafford's been a quarterback. Stafford's just never going to be remembered like Tony Romo. I mean, if you were to go through like the Hall of Fame quarterbacks over the last 30 years, the Marinos and Kellys and the two most undeserving quarterbacks of the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, are Kurt Warner and Troy Aikman, but for different reasons. Warner did more in the time that he was there. It was just there was less. Mm-hmm. Aikman had that offensive line, Emmitt Smith running the football, Jimmy Johnson as his coach. There was no salary cap. Jerry Jones was willing to do whatever it took to win. Aikman, I mean, deep down inside in terms of quarterback play, I would take Ryan Tannehill over Troy Aikman. Aikman was a game manager in the bad sense. Now, he won a lot of games, but Aikman was not John Elway. He was not Jim Kelly. He was not Dan Marino. He was not either the great quarterbacks of that era. He wasn't that, but he was Troy Aikman. So everybody loves him. Romo was not Aikman, mm-hmm. and that's how far he had. Eddie George was, you think of the running backs of that era, Marshall Faulk, Jerome Bettis. Eddie George is with those guys. Corey Dillon is with those guys. Corey Dillon's the one to me that I will never let go of because his numbers and Edgerrin James' numbers are almost the exact same. Same amount of Pro Bowls, same amount of Super Bowls, same amount of touchdowns, same amount, everything. And Edgerrin James is in, and Corey Dillon's not. Because when Corey Dillon was one of the baddest dudes in the league, Corey Dillon played on the Bengals. Now, I know there's always going to be the guy who's on a bad team, who never gets watched, who everybody's like, this guy is incredible, he's unstoppable, he's unbelievable. Yes, that happens. Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, those guys happen. But those are guys that are absolute rock solid, undoubtedly, unstoppable Hall of Famers. Most guys that make the Hall of Fame aren't. They're Jerome Bettis. And that's what I think we have in this case. If Eddie played for the Cowboys, I think Eddie's in the Hall of Fame. Eddie is hands down in the Hall of Fame if he played for the Cowboys.
Do you have a good question if we have time to sneak another text in here?
Go for it.
The Canadian Titan texts in and says the Cowboys are definitely overrated, and seeing that they are ranked 2 spots higher from last year, why? It makes no sense to me. But my question is, where would you rank the Cowboys' offensive weapons? I think 6 is good behind the Bucks, Titans, Browns, Vikings, Broncos, and Chiefs.
Okay, so they're definitely behind the Vikings. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of who else is there, after the offseason. Because so many teams have moved guys around, and there's been so many. I think we got to look. Cam Akers just tore his Achilles, so maybe they don't count. But those wide receivers at the Rams are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
When you've
Cooper
got Kupp and Woods and Higbee, mm-hmm. and that's a pretty good. I think it's probably there with the Rams. Now again, the Rams lost their running back, mm-hmm. so it's not the same. But I would say somewhere around where the Rams sit. I don't think the Cowboys are bad on offense, but I don't think the Cowboys, I don't look at them and think that they're special. I look at Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, and I'm like, that's a special offense. Mm-hmm. That group is special. And I will, again, go to my talking about the Cowboys, and this was, again, another thing I think is fair on the Delaney Walker front, which is, I believe personally, Delaney Walker is right about what he said in general because Ryan Tannehill makes the top 10 list in the NFL if he's on the Dallas Cowboys. I think Tannehill's a top 5 quarterback in the league. I think he's considered a top 5 quarterback if he's on the Cowboys because he's deflated being on the Titans at honorable mention. So take away the deflation of being on the Titans. Now you inflate him up to probably where he belongs, 8, 9, somewhere there. Then you inflate him because he's on the Cowboys. So once you get past that tier of great quarterbacks, Russell and Brady and Aaron, and once he's past that, then Tannehill's in there.
We talk about the Titans not being that kind of sexy team to talk about in the national conversation. The Cowboys are. And there are a lot of other teams. I mean, I think the Packers are in that conversation as well. But is there another team that has the same kind of vibe as the Titans? That, like, they're just, no matter how good they could be, no matter how many weapons that they may have on their team, they're not going to get as much love as the Packers, the Cowboys,
Sure, there's a
the
whole.
Patriots.
Look at the noon slate: Carolina, Atlanta, Cincinnati.
See, I don't think Atlanta is that.
Oh, Atlanta! No one cares about Atlanta. They don't even care about Atlanta in Atlanta.
Yeah, 'cause they're.
They don't. Come on now. Like, they don't. The Dolphins. I mean, there are more teams.
But I think if the Dolphins are good, people love to talk about the Dolphins.
When was the last time the Dolphins were good?
Well, that's the thing. But I'm just saying.
I don't think the Dolphins have been good in your lifetime. Like,
probably not.
good.
Probably not.
So, I don't think the Dolphins. No. I'm trying to think it through, like, in my head. The Ravens are on the fence. You know, the Ravens, they do get talked about because they got Lamar Jackson, who's a superstar, but at the same time, like, so on and so forth.
But I think if Ryan Tannehill is the quarterback of the Ravens, he gets a lot more love.
I don't think so. That's just me. If he's the quarterback of the Chicago Bears, he gets a lot more love.
Fair.
That, to me, I think is different.
Fair.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get back to your text on this, 615-737-1025. Plus, Chase sits down with Alante Taylor, the Tennessee Volunteers at SEC Media Days. We'll have that later this hour as well. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They are proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols and proud supporters of the Nashville Predators. You see that Hiller logo right there on the ice. Hiller is celebrating the home of the free all July long with special deals for customers. Get your free grilling must-haves when you make your home improvements. Deals include the free Yeti Tundra cooler with the purchase of a new tankless water heater, free Traeger wood pellet grill with the purchase of a new whole home generator, and you can get that free Traeger wood pellet grill with the purchase of select new HVAC systems. So if you want to get that, get in with my friends at Hiller. Their work is backed by the happy you'll be or the service is free guarantee. And I know this because I've had Hiller come out to my home, and let me say this. Every time they've come out, I have been happy. That's how good and professional they are. These deals are only happening in July, so you've got to call as soon as possible. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds and the Vols. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Stillman and Company, again, the Dallas Cowboys, they put the Dallas Cowboys, Bill Barnwell on his list. You think, you worked at ESPN. Mm-hmm. You think Bill did this on purpose? You think this is like a troll job?
I don't think it's a troll job, but I don't think that he would put something on ESPN.com. I don't think he would publish anything he didn't actually believe in. But I do think that maybe that was a thought of like, hey, somebody thought that the Cowboys could have a top 3 offense in the NFL, so he threw it on there because it would spark conversation. I don't think he intentionally would just throw some sort of, like if he put the Washington football team as a top 3 offense in the league, then I would have a lot more questions.
That is a take. Let's go to your phone, 615-737-1025. I also have a take on something TD said, where I'm not saying I disagree with TD, but I don't completely agree with TD. Alante Taylor, by the way, will join Chase later this hour. Let's go to your phones. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Caroline, what do we have?
One texter checks in and says, if you think that Ryan Tannehill is better than Troy Aikman, then you are absolutely clueless. Look at the stats and the results.
Again, if I had Emmitt Smith in that offensive line, I mean, Troy Aikman was a game manager. Now, Troy belongs in the Hall of Fame because he was a quarterback and won a lot of games. But this idea of Troy going out there and knocking off Brett Favre through the air, throwing 400, no. I mean, Troy was a high completion percentage guy in an era where, again, Tannehill's thrown 55 touchdowns in 2 years of being quarterback of the Titans. Mm-hmm. Here's Aikman, his total in Dallas when they were good of throwing touchdowns. 11, 23, 15, 13, 16, 12, 19, 12, 17. It's like game manager right there. That's not even a touchdown a game. 15 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns. That's the same amount of touchdowns that people got mad at Mariota for. Like, that's what Troy Aikman was doing. And Troy Aikman could do it because Troy Aikman had Emmitt Smith, and he had that offensive line, and Jerry was paying Jimmy, and they had a no salary cap. But, I mean, put Troy Aikman back in those days. Flip-flop Aikman and Marino. Put Marino in Dallas, put Aikman in Miami. And we're probably talking about Dan Marino in the same breath as we're talking about Tom Brady.
You would?
Well, I mean, I think Marino is like one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to never win a Super Bowl. Put him in Dallas with that group. He probably wins 5 of them. So now we probably are talking about Brady and Marino in the same breath. And the only difference, Marino just never won any Super Bowls. So
right.
Once you don't win a Super Bowl, I can't talk to you about being one of the greatest of all time.
Right.
You win 5 of them, and you play like Dan Marino, then we can talk about it. What else we got?
So one texter checks in and says, I just saw that ranking from ESPN on Instagram. I have no idea how the Kansas City Chiefs did not make the top 5, but the Browns and the Vikings did. Cowboys over the Titans aside, how on earth?
What do you think of the Browns from this? Because I do wonder if we're talking about offensive skill position players, right? So you've got, I think the Titans have the best running back in Derrick Henry, and according to the Jeremy Fowler list, however you want to make it, you've got A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. You know, that's Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt.
That's
kind of
1-2.
You know, that is Keenan McCardle, Jimmy Smith. You know, that is big-time stuff. Cleveland has Jarvis Landry, who is a good possession receiver, but he's kind of fallen off a little bit. Mm-hmm. Odell Beckham's been hurt. Mm-hmm. They've got maybe one of the better tight ends in the game in Austin Hooper. Mm-hmm. And they've got 2 of the best running backs in the NFL. Chubb over Hunt, but they're both really darn good. Mm-hmm. Cleveland makes a case because of the number of guys that they have. Cleveland makes a legitimate case. I think I would take the Vikings guys over the Cleveland guys because I think the Vikings have the high-end guys. Tampa Bay's got the numbers and the studs. Mm-hmm. Kansas City has the studs but not the numbers. The Vikings have the great running back and the experienced wide receiver and the guy who might end up being one of the best receivers in the league. It's very complicated where you place Cleveland.
I think my thing with Cleveland is everyone looks at it as a like a very high-end offense because of the two guys at wide receiver in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. I think that they're a sexy name, and I think that that's a conversation that people in the national media, in the national conversation, like to talk about. But when you really break it down, like the OBJ and the Jarvis Landry of 3 to 5 years ago, like that's a totally different story. But they're kind of getting up there in age. And like you said, Odell Beckham's been hurt. We don't know if he can come back as 100%. Jarvis Landry has been a number 2 guy to Odell Beckham Jr. So I think that my only thing with Cleveland is just the uncertainty and the number of miles that are on Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. But I mean, you got Nick Chubb. That is one heck of a running back.
Chubb's awesome.
He's really good.
Chubb's awesome. I also wonder how much do we value all the other guys in Green Bay? You know,
Devontae Adams is
after
really...
them. So after him and Aaron Jones. Because they have, you know, I think I would take Jones and Adams over Brown, Julio, and Derrick Henry. Because that's how much I think of Adams. If we're waiting and they have Robert Tonyan at tight end.
But
so
are you going to plug
guys,
in Devontae Adams into the Titans offense? Or just hypothetically speaking, the Devontae Adams production in
I think
Green
Devontae
Bay.
Adams could play anywhere. I think Devontae Adams is awesome. But I'm thinking about all the other guys on the Packers. I don't even know who their other receivers are. I don't even know what the rest of their – and I wonder how much they value – like, how good are those guys? I know I shouldn't take this call, but I'm going to. Lance is up next on Troy Aikman. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Lance.
Holy cow, Jared. I wish Floyd was there today.
Floyd never loved Troy Aikman. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, my God. Troy Aikman was as good a quarterback as there was at that time. He beat Steve Young. He played tremendously in the system he was in. And he can't help. He had the best offensive line in the
Lance,
league.
are you a Cowboy fan?
Can't help. But then let me ask you this.
No. I asked you, are you a Cowboy fan? Lance, I don't care what you're asking me. I asked you, are you a Cowboy fan?
I am a diehard Cowboy fan, but you lost your mind.
So let me ask you this question.
Lost your mind.
Let me ask you this question, Lance.
Lost your mind today.
Let me ask you this question. Troy Aikman beat Jim Kelly in the Super Bowl. Which quarterback was the better quarterback?
It didn't make a difference. Which one had the better team?
Well, that's my point. That's my point, Lance.
But you're saying he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
No, I didn't say that. I just said that Troy Aikman was an average quarterback.
You said a while ago he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
He's an average quarterback. Thank you for the call, Lance. To me, Troy Aikman was, I mean, look, the guy wins all the Super Bowls, and he's on TV every year. You got to put him in the Hall of Fame. But, like, he and Jim Kelly are not the same player. Jim Kelly was a much better quarterback. I feel like you have no idea what I'm talking about.
I'm dealing with the stream at the moment. I'm just letting you do your thing. If I have a look of confusion on my face, it's not toward you.
Well, I just figured you never watched Troy Aikman. You never watched, those guys.
A bit before my time, yes. I mean, I know who Troy
Aikman
is.
And in talk radio, you're told not to just go into yesteryear all the time. But Aikman was fine. He was fine. Now, again, the diehard Cowboy fans are going to be worked up, but he was fine. Chase sits down with Alante Taylor. The Vols have a lot of optimism and a lot of excitement. Chase sits down with Alante Taylor of Tennessee. Next, what he had to say, Stillman & Company. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. SEC Media Days live in Hoover. Chase McCabe is hanging out, presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. 102.5 The Game's coverage of SEC Media Days is brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket, your equipment supplier in Nashville, including gaskets, hoses, and hose fitting seals, packing, joints, gauges, fire protection, cups, belting, and more. If you need it, they've got it. Chase McCabe is sitting down with Vols corner Alante Taylor in Hoover at SEC Media Days.
Back here on Radio Row, ESPN 102.5, The Game, presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Chase McCabe with Alante Taylor, defensive back of the University of Tennessee. So what's this whole process of going through SEC Media Days, the car wash as we call it? What's it been like for you?
It's been awesome, man. It's been a blessing being able to come here and represent my team, represent the University of Tennessee, the football program, but also my family and who we are and where we come from means a lot to me. I've always wanted to, this was my dream. I've always wanted to come here, not for the soul of myself, but knowing that, I am a leader on this football team and I'm a leader at the university.
What does it mean to you, based on what you just said, for your head coach in this program to pick you to represent the university, to help sell the university as you all try and move into this new era of Tennessee football?
Yeah, it means a lot to me, man. I've heard you have 85 maybe plus scholarship players, and with COVID rules, they shrunk it down to only 2 guys coming to represent. That's huge to me, and I'll never take that lightly, and it's something that I will be able to look back to and be able to tell my family one day or my kids one day, hey, Dad did this because he did this and this off the field right.
It's early on in the process, but Josh Heupel has come in and tried to put his stamp on this program. He talked about relationships. He talked about letting the players have their voice and having that connection with the players. What's it been like with him so far?
It's been awesome, man. Coach Heupel, he kind of took me away in his first meeting we ever had. He said he wanted to do all these things, but he said none of that stuff means nothing without action. And Coach Heupel's lived up to everything that he said he wanted to do for our program thus far. And I think by that, our team has bought into him, and we trust our coaching staff, we trust our strength staff, and we trust that they're going to get the best out of us as long as we buy into what they're saying and what they're doing. And we have a guy like Coach Heupel who's consistent in what he says he's going to do. Why not?
The offense gets a lot of talk with his system that he's bringing in, but what about the defense? What are you expecting out of this defense this year? I'm expecting this defense to do numbers. I keep saying it. I feel like this defense could have the number one in all categories that you can think of, either be stopping the run, stopping the pass, turnovers, wherever it may be. I feel like this defense can do that just because I have so much faith in this defense, but I also have so much faith in this new staff that we have and the coaches that we have. They just pull the best out of everyone each and every day, rather be in the weight room, rather be on the practice field. So this offense is going to get us ready for Saturdays. Now, I say that with every inch of my body just because everyone, like you said, everyone's talking about this offense and how great it is, yeah, but they don't understand. We have to go against that offense Monday through Friday, right? So hearing how we can get better from the offense, but also the offense getting better from us is going to help us as a whole. So come Saturday night, it's one big orange family playing. As a leader, you have to help bring this team together. There were some guys that left. They didn't want to be here. They wanted to move on. How do you say to the guys, the young guys that are here, they see that, hey, we got to be a family, we got to be as one, and that's how we're going to be successful? Yeah, you just love them, man. You got to wrap your arm around those guys, and you just kind of tell your story a little bit, why you stayed, what that power team means to you, and what should that power team mean to them. When you kind of look back at the guys who've came through the University of Tennessee, you kind of get my blood starts to boil in a good way, because it's like those guys put so much sweat, blood, and tears into this program. It's like, why not stay and do the same thing? That power team means so much more than you. You came to the University of Tennessee for a reason. So you just kind of love on those younger guys, man, and you just let them know, Coach Heupel in this program is going to go exactly where it needs to go. Me as a senior, I might not get to experience the long run of this, but I just know and I trust in everything that Coach Heupel is doing, and that's what you kind of preaching to those younger guys, hey, stay around, bro, because this is going to be something really fun. Name, image, and likeness is something that's been talked about a lot. As somebody that you've been there when it wasn't a thing, now it is a thing. What does it mean for the future of college athletes? I think it's huge for the future of college athletes. I kind of hate that it happened on the back end of my career just because, I can't really tap into it as much as I want to. But as a leader right now, my focus is on my team. My focus is on how I can stay healthy and how I can make sure our team goes into spring or fall camp in the best shape and the best way possible. So I'm not really tapping in so much into the NIL just because I don't want that to be a distraction for me. But I'm preaching to the other guys who are tapping into that, hey,
kudos to you, bro. Like, do what you have to do. Like, make the money, do what you have to. But as a leader, I'm also encouraging them and letting them know, like, hey, we're in fall camp. Like, we're getting ready to go into fall camp. We're getting ready for a season. So do that, but also know, like, this team means more to you than in the NIL situation right now.
Alante, appreciate the time. Go eat lunch. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
That is Tennessee defensive back Alante Taylor here on Radio Row. Chase McCabe, all brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket here on ESPN 105 The Game, the Game Nashville app.
There you go, Alante Taylor. I thought Chase and I thought it was very well said by Alante Taylor, especially the reasons for staying. You know, I mean, this is something where I always look back at Nick Saban's first couple of years at Alabama. Like, yeah, he got Julio Jones in his first recruiting class, and Saban was an elite recruiter the day he stepped back into college football. But you can't do that without Glenn Coffey buying in. You can't do that without Greg McElroy or John Parker Wilson buying in. And Josh Heupel's going to have to get the buy-in from the guys he has now that are still here. Because Jeremy Pruitt, again, you bring up the recruiting stuff all you want, but Jeremy Pruitt had a quarterback. He didn't recruit his entire tenure. He was there. So, again, Heupel's going to try to change things up, but you're going to need the Alante Taylors. I thought Alante Taylor, again, in order to do it, you must be able to articulate it. Speaking of the Vols, coming up next, Josh Heupel is using this as a message. But if it's his message for recruits, it's not going to work. Next, Stillman and Company, it's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
From the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's Stillman and Company. Delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. With Jared Stillman on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. ESPN 1025 The Game. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey in an hour. Trevor Maddich later this hour. We are loaded with SEC football talk, SEC Media Days, our coverage presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. So Josh Heupel today took the podium. And again, I think Caroline brought up a good point earlier today. I think there are some Vol fans who looked at the hire as somewhat underwhelming and kind of say, okay, all right, well, we'll see how this goes and kind of hope for the best and maybe expect the worst. And then there are the Vol fans that think no matter who the coach is, they could name Jared Stillman as the next head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers, and they would be all for it. On Rocky Top we go. And there's one thing. I thought Heupel was fine. I thought his press conference was fine. Chase told me that Heupel spent a lot of time talking to people and getting to know media people, which I think is very important. That wasn't a big deal. But there's one thing I knew Heupel was going to talk about. I knew he was going to bring it up multiple times, and he did bring it up in his press conference. And I just think it's kind of time to maybe give it a rest. You know these political rallies that you see on TV where 20,000 people go and they cheer on their candidate and they say things like, we're going to lower taxes and yeah. Or if it's another part, we're going to raise taxes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
people do get juiced for taxes.
Those people are already going to vote whatever way they're voting. You know, you don't have to convince them. There's like 6 counties across America that decide the presidential election. It's amazing. There's like 6 counties. And what those people in, I forget what it's called, like Duck County, Pennsylvania, with those people don't care about, you know, the red meat stuff that you'll see on Fox News or MSNBC. They don't care about that. And I look at the recruits because that's really what matters at Tennessee, right? It doesn't matter if you're getting more fans. It doesn't matter if your fans buy into Josh Heupel because they see him in a press conference. It's all about recruiting. Get better players, you'll win more games. Everybody knows it. It is time tested. And one thing I just always hear every Tennessee coach talk about, Fulmer talked about it, both as coach and athletic director. Kiffin talked about it. Dooley talked about it. Butch loved talking about it. Pruitt even talked about it. And now Josh Heupel's talking about it. And it is the reverence for the Power T and the brand of the University of Tennessee. And Josh Heupel did not waste any time today getting to that.
I'm honored to be the head coach of Tennessee football. This is one of the great and iconic logos in all of college football, steep in tradition. It's a great honor to be the caretaker of Tennessee football at this time, and really proud of what our players and our staff have done in 6 months, and just couldn't be prouder and really excited about getting back onto to the football field. And as we talked today a little bit, just had a lot of fun getting to know the former players at Tennessee, connect with the community, and this great iconic logo, be able to put a new age approach on it while celebrating all the great traditions that are Tennessee football.
I tell you, this logo, you think of the old days of General Neyland, and you think about Tennessee football and Coach Fulmer and Coach Majors and all the national titles we've won, and yeah, Tennessee football, there's nothing better than that. You do know Josh Heupel played at Oklahoma, and he also at one point in his career coached at Oklahoma. I don't view going to the University of Tennessee as a dream job for Josh Heupel. I view it as, you want to make $4 million a year? Here you go. The idea that every Tennessee coach has sold, that this is an iconic program, this brand, this Power T, this doesn't mean anything with recruits. It's funny. Most people that are recruited to play college football are between the ages of 15 and now 23 because of the transfer portal, and so you're doing kind of 2 kinds of recruiting. It's almost like the draft and free agency. You're recruiting out of high school and you're recruiting, obviously, people that are already in college. But guess what? Every single person that is in between those age brackets does not remember when the Tennessee Volunteers were good. The last time the Vols were good was 2001. That was when they had Albert Hainsworth and John Henderson at defensive tackle. They had Dante Stallworth and Kelly Washington at wide receiver. That was Philip Fulmer's last great team. They lost to Nick Saban, some guy no one had ever heard of at LSU, in the SEC championship game, and it cost him a chance to play Miami for the national title. And ever since then, Tennessee has been a Gator Bowl team, a Music City Bowl team, a Chick-fil-A before it was one of the big bowls bowl team. That's what they are. The Tax Slayer Bowl. That's what they are. And so when I hear people in Tennessee and coaches on a national platform talking about the Power T, I think to myself, nobody who you're trying to reach cares. And I almost think the arrogance sometimes that is perpetuated by the fans, hey, we're this great iconic program. That logo is, you can sell that baby anywhere. I think, get with the times. Put the newspaper down, pick up an iPad, and get with the times. These kids do not care about your logo. They do not care about the big orange. They don't even care about 100,000 people that they would play in front of. You know why? Because everywhere they go has 100,000 fans. You think that Power T logo is so iconic? Guess what? You think the red A of Alabama isn't a big deal? You think the Bulldog at Georgia, UGA, you don't think that's a big deal? They're all big deals across the SEC. These kids care about three things. One, am I going to have a good time when I go to your campus? Two, can I go to the NFL and make exorbitant amounts of money? And three, are you going to let me play? Those are the three things they care about. All the other stuff, it doesn't matter. In the 1990s, it mattered. In the 1980s, it definitely mattered. Do you know why? Because there wasn't an SEC network, and there wasn't ESPN Plus, and there wasn't CBS Sports Network, and there wasn't ESPN2 and ESPNU and all these other channels that every game ends up on TV. So if you wanted to go and play college football and you wanted to be on TV, you had to play at Tennessee or Florida or Texas or USC or Notre Dame, or guess what? You can play at Duke and your games will be on TV. Anywhere you play will be on TV. The Tennessee Volunteers are just another team in the grand scheme of college football. In fact, Max, if you could, Josh Heupel was asked earlier today about where Tennessee's history used to be and the gap between where they are as a program now, and the same question every Tennessee coach has been asked when they get hired, and the same answer they give, which is, how are you going to get it back to the glory days? Take a listen.
How big do you think the chasm is from where the program is now to where it was then, and what is your vision for getting it back to that?
If you go by wins and losses, right, we're not where we need to be for sure. But the only time constraints you put on that are ones you put on yourself. I have a different perspective a little bit maybe of the opportunity that is Tennessee football, and I say that from my playing experience. I went to Oklahoma when they hadn't been to a bowl game for I think 5 straight years, right? When you get the right alignment from president to chancellor to athletic director to head coach, and you hire a great staff, and you're consistent and you're accountable, I feel like you have an opportunity to move things forward quickly. And there's certainly challenges that we face as a program, but there's great opportunities. And that's why I came to Tennessee. This is Tennessee. This is one of the iconic programs in all of college sports and all of college football. We get an opportunity to celebrate the great traditions while put a new age approach on it. And our kids and our staff, they're all there because of that, right? They chose the Power T for those reasons. Our staff chose the Power T for those reasons. We're going to go out and compete every single day and push forward.
The first part of that was important. When I was at Oklahoma, we weren't very good. Then we hired Bob Stoops. Then we got good players. Then we won. That is the important part. This is Tennessee. I mean, these players here are here because of Tennessee. Guess what, Josh? They sucked last year. And the last coach that got kids to Tennessee, yeah, they sucked too. And the kids before that, they were actually pretty good, but Butch Jones just sucked as a coach. And the kids before that, they kind of stunk too. Everybody that goes there, you can say it's about the Power T. You can say it's about... Come on now. They're at Tennessee because they got offered a scholarship to play in the SEC, and for whatever reason they picked, they thought it was the best fit for them. Maybe nobody else was offering them a scholarship that was that good. Maybe they are close to home. I highly doubt if we were to take the 100 kids on that roster and ask them why they picked the University of Tennessee, I highly doubt the Power T was the reason why. And maybe he's just doing it to make the fans happy because just like at a political rally, when you throw out the red meat, the fans, yeah! But let's be real. The target audience, the recruits, the kids that are going to save Tennessee football, they don't care about the Power T. And it is time for us who live here, some of us root for the Vols, it's time for us to stop pretending like we're allowed to be arrogant because our brand in the history of college football is nobody cares. Nobody cares about what your brand in college football is. If you're trying to go in the home of a kid at Charlotte, North Carolina, like Philip Fulmer did with Albert Haynesworth, and you're trying to sell them on the Power T, Dabo Sweeney's walking in right after you and selling you on all of their NFL draft picks and their playoff appearances. You got to get with the times. Nobody cares anymore about the Power T. Can we please drop it? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, I don't think Heupel harped too much on the history of Tennessee today and the Power T, but can we just get over it? Caroline, I know your dad went to Tennessee. He's a diehard Vol fan.
Diehard.
I'm sure he thinks this is blasphemous that I'm sitting here saying nobody who matters cares about the Power T anymore. But let's be real. The history of Tennessee, nobody cares. Nobody who matters in college football cares. Alabama is winning because they hired the coach who was at LSU. Like if you cared about history and tradition, you'd never hire that guy. Oh my God, how dare! But they don't care about it. And I just think I think it's almost arrogant when Tennessee fans feel like they deserve a seat at this college football table where, quite frankly, nobody who plays college football remembers them being.
But I do think it is something that is very important to sell your current players on. I mean, we listened to Alante Taylor, and he was going in on, I stayed here. A lot of my teammates transferred, but I believe in this place.
But the current players aren't any good.
We can do. Okay, but you start to get buy-in from the current players, and that makes getting your butts kicked against Georgia and Florida and Kentucky and Alabama a lot easier, and that keeps people on your roster. It keeps players at your school, and then you can develop them, and I think that's how you get success as well. It's also bringing in those top recruits, and you got to sell them on this is a tight team, and we will get you where you need to go. But, I mean, I'm not going to say that, the logo and the tradition doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
I don't think it matters.
You don't think it matters? If you are running out on the field and you are wearing an orange and white uniform, you think that they can win a game without caring about what the logo that's on their helmet.
Correct.
I don't agree.
I never got it. Like at Louisville, like what's our grand tradition? We're not in football, women's basketball where I worked, that we were not historically a great program. We're not a great program. I mean, we have Johnny Unitas, but I mean, that doesn't matter. What
Does
matters
Louisville win national championships?
In football?
Yes.
We get a whole heck of a lot closer than the Vols do. I mean, we were right there in the playoff mix. We had Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's how – you want to know how we got there? How we got good? We got good because Bobby Petrino came in and started, scoring 75 points a game. We got good because we recruited Teddy Bridgewater. We got good. How do we get Teddy Bridgewater? because we didn't try to sell them on tradition. We went and hired the coach from Miami that was paying all those players.
You don't win national championships with tradition, but it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier whenever you get buy-in from your program and from your players.
I just don't think those players care. I do not think.
Well, that's probably another reason why they're not very good is because they don't care.
I don't think.
They don't care, so I think it matters when your players care about the jersey that they're wearing.
You think the Alabama players care about the tradition of Alabama before they get to Alabama? You think when Derrick Henry flip-flopped from Georgia to Alabama, it was because of the tradition?
I'm not saying it's the reason why, but I'm saying it doesn't hurt.
But it doesn't matter. That's my point. It doesn't matter. And I get it because it matters to the fans. So if you want the fans to be excited, you got to talk about this power T right here. But it doesn't matter.
It's not going to flip a recruit from the University of Alabama to the University of Tennessee.
It doesn't matter.
To sell them on the poppies in the hill and whatever the tradition may be. But
the first part of what you said, I don't need a but. The first part of what you said is true. It will not flip a recruit from Alabama to Tennessee. Then it doesn't matter. Fair?
No.
Why?
Because I don't think you're saying it doesn't matter at all. I'm saying it doesn't matter to some recruits, but I'm saying that buy-in matters to your program. When you have guys in the locker room who could give a darn about the school they're playing for, I think that's toxic.
Right now, what do you think the best program in the Pac-12 is? Year in and year out.
Oregon.
Tell me about the grand tradition of Oregon football.
Well, why do I care about Oregon football? I didn't go
because
to Oregon
there is no grand tradition. It's because Phil Knight gave them a bunch of money and they got cool uniforms. That's how Oregon blew up.
Then that's the culture of Oregon.
Right, but that's a now thing. They don't care about 1973. UCLA's got more history. USC's got more history. Stanford's got more history. Cal's got more. They don't care. They don't care. I hear what you're saying, but the recruits, Michigan has got to pull their head out of their rear end because nobody cares about the tradition of Michigan football. They're picking Ohio State because everybody at Ohio State wins championships and goes to the NFL. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I'm just saying, the arrogance that the power team matters, that the history of Tennessee, we've got the history. Stop. Nobody cares. By the way, Gonzaga and Baylor played for the national championship in college basketball. Woo! Great history of Baylor basketball. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your reaction on this next. Stillman and Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game. And I will say this. What does Tennessee have to sell? What do they have to sell? What does Josh Heupel have to sell? That's next. Stillman and Company, we're live from the Whole Sonic Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
And the third group of people that we've really tried to connect with is our VFLs, our Vol for Life. And you look at some of the great players in college football, they've worn the power T, and the ability to welcome them back, embrace them, and for them to give back to our current players and know that this is their home forever has been something that's been fun to start building again. And you're talking about some of the great players that have ever played the game. And Reggie White, Peyton Manning, T. Martin, Alvin Kamara, Charles Davis. Those are just a handful of guys that are celebrated at Tennessee, and for those that are still living have been able to come back and be a part of our program.
I love that. Josh Heupel saying, hey, want to be like Reggie White? Come to UT. How many people that are eligible for college football right now, like recruits, how many people know who Reggie White is?
I don't. I would probably say not very many.
Okay. Charles Davis?
Probably not very many.
Okay, so
they know Alvin Kamara.
And they know Peyton Manning. Those are, and I get it, but Nick Saban's got a whole list of guys he can just pull from and say, okay, well, we got this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy.
Tennessee's not unique in having players in the NFL. Almost every single college football program has players in the NFL.
The problem is who they compete with has a lot more right now in the NFL.
Okay, then they can't use tradition. They can't use culture. They can't use guys in the NFL. You're Josh Heupel. How do you recruit a guy to Tennessee?
I don't know. That's the hard part. That's why I started the show today talking about, was Heupel going to go to SEC Media Days and act like Nick Saban and do all the required stuff and then get on the plane and go home? Or was Heupel going to go downstairs and chit-chat with the media? And Chase McCabe said that Heupel was down there chit-chatting with the media, and I think that's a very big deal. You have to out-relationship them. Like, you have to have better relationships, and you have to wait for those relationships to pay off. I mean, somehow James Franklin figured out how to do it at Vanderbilt. I don't know, though. But this idea of selling the Power T logo is like, hey, this is one of the grand traditions of college football. I almost think the fans need to hear it. Like, he's saying it to the fans and not the recruits, because the fans need to hear this to think, yeah, we don't suck. We are great. Yeah, go Vols. That's the best I can come up with.
Well, maybe he is talking to the fans to say, hey, tickets went on sale last week.
Max, what do you think of Max is in for Ian. What do you think of the Power T and the brand of Tennessee?
I'm on your side, Jared.
Nobody cares anymore about it.
I mean, I am with you in the fact that is not what you can rest your laurels on when you are talking to 15, 16, 17-year-old kids about, hey, look at what we did before you were born. I agree with you that that's not going to cut it, but I disagree with you that you think it doesn't matter.
So I talked to a college coach today.
Okay.
And they told me this. They said, I've worked at programs like that before, fan bases that are caught in the time warp. The actual game has changed. It's all about explosive offense, but the industry has changed. And right now it's really Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and then a group of teams between 4 and 15. And none of those are really all that close to those first three. So they're stuck in the time warp, but it's all about offense. I think that's the sell. Heupel did that today, talked about the offense. I think that's his sell. What are the phones? 615-737-1025. Text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Caroline, you're on the text line. What do we have?
One texter texts in and says, I disagree on if it matters. It's cultural. Recruits want to win and live within a culture that is exciting for them. I actually agree, though, about Tennessee specifically. The culture isn't exciting anymore. The culture is built on the past instead of a clear vision for the next 4 years for this athlete.
Sure. Now, when you pack those stadiums and you've got College Game Day and you've got CBS, that matters.
That you can sell that.
You lived that at LSU. Mm-hmm. That matters.
Yeah.
I'll say this about Louisville, where I went to college. We've had some good teams and College Game Day and Lamar Jackson and Heisman Trophy, and we've had some good stuff, but we've never had what I see on CBS. Like what I see at Alabama or Auburn or A&M or LSU or Georgia. We've never had that. We will never have that. Like ever. At Louisville, we will never have that. No matter how good we are, we won't have that kind of atmosphere, ever, because we're just not that. That matters.
But Tennessee can be that, can have
sure.
that. Absolutely, they can. Necessarily a big brand. If you look at let's say the top 20 most historical college football programs in all of college football history, Tennessee is one of them. So when they're good, people care.
Sure, but Notre Dame will never have that either, and Notre Dame is probably number one as far as all-time tradition is considered with college football.
We'll never have what?
They'll never have the kind of atmosphere you see at an SEC game.
No.
That's just not Notre Dame.
Like
that's just
culture.
not who Notre Dame is.
Yeah, that's just culture.
And
so it matters. Culture matters.
Except that it doesn't matter because, again, Tennessee doesn't have that right now. And Tennessee's not building it because Tennessee was once a great historical program. Notre Dame was a great historical program. Tennessee doesn't have it because Tennessee stinks. And how do you get it back? You have to get good. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a tough spot to be in. I'll say this. I feel bad. I do feel bad for Josh Heupel because, to your point, I don't really know exactly what he's supposed to recruit to.
But, I mean, I look at Kentucky, for example. I mean, I think Kentucky has been a joke in the grand scheme of the SEC. I think almost Kentucky fans could tell you, like, we don't care about football. We care about basketball. Kentucky is in the conversation to finish second in the SEC East.
You know why they are?
Because... Why? You tell me why you think.
Well, you just told me that Kentucky doesn't care about football. They spent over $100 million on a brand new facility. I remember Mitch Barnhart telling Floyd at Bridgestone Arena before SEC Media Day for basketball one time. We were the only radio station there. We ended up talking to Cal. And I remember Mitch Barnhart telling Floyd, you have got to come check out this facility. You have got to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
And after that moment, Floyd, who does not listen to BS, was somewhat sold on Kentucky football and Mitch Barnhart because if you put your money where your mouth is, that matters. So that's why Kentucky is where Kentucky is, because they've allowed themselves to go through the smoke, build themselves a new facility, and now they are kind of okay.
Do you think facilities matter anymore?
I mean, everyone's got one. So
but
now it's
the
like
nicest state-of-the-art. I mean, like when LSU built their new locker rooms, that was like everyone was freaking out about it.
I think it matters from this stance. If you don't have it, then you're in trouble. But do I think it really matters? I mean,
especially now, post-NIL.
I don't base what airline I fly off of the movies you offer me, but you better have them. Because whenever I'm flying, you better have the movies. Because Southwest got them, Delta's got them. I mean, you better have the movies. Trevor Maddich joins us next. What does Trevor think so far of SEC Media Days? And what does he think about Josh Heupel? We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company's delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company as SEC Media Days continues along. Greg Sankey in 30 minutes. But there is nobody who knows the coaches doing all of the talking more than Trevor Matich, ESPN college football analyst. And I'll say this about Josh Heupel. There's one thing I like, one thing I probably didn't, or I shouldn't say didn't like, but one thing that I just don't think is a big deal. Trevor joins us now. So, Trev, I want to start with you. I'm sure you have done talking season interviews for, 15 years, 20 years?
It's been a long time, yep.
A long time. I'm guessing not a lot moves the needle in terms of what you hear from a coach at a conference media day as far as your thoughts on the team or the season or anything like that, because you've probably heard the same thing over and over again. But I will say this. I said about Josh Heupel today, I had Chase McCabe's down there with us, and I told Chase, I said, I want you to watch Josh Heupel like a hawk. And I want you to see how he interacts with the media outside of what he has to do. It's easy to be buddy-buddy with Feinbaum and Greg McElroy and Jordan Rodgers and Trevor Matich and all those guys, and to do your national media with CBS and Gary Danielson. But do you go out of your way? Do you do more than what you're required to do? Do you go down on Radio Row and talk to the guys in Atlanta and Jacksonville and New Orleans and Nashville and places where they have kids? And Chase told me he thought that Heupel went down there, did a bunch of interviews extra. Not only that, but took time to spend time with the hosts and shoot the breeze and talk to people. And Trevor, I think that is the most important thing Josh Heupel could have done today at SEC Media Days, because you never know where those relationships and those impressions will take you. What do you think?
And what information that he can give to those people that they'll then be able to put out over the airwaves that recruits will be listening to. I mean, if hosts of local and national radio shows and television shows don't know great things that they're doing, how can they talk about them on the air? And so he's making sure that they know about the things that he wants them to know about. And that's huge. And that's important, because from a standpoint of what Tennessee has to do, they're not going to out-recruit Alabama and Georgia for the most of the top guys. Not yet. They'll probably snag a couple of them here and there over the next couple of years. But they need to get that next tier. Those players that Alabama won't sign, but that can be developed into players that can compete with Alabama with that kind of development. But there's a lot of schools competing for those guys. And so by getting his word out, his message out to as many places as possible, he makes it more likely that some of those players will hear his message from his perspective.
How important is that? Because I was talking with an SEC coach earlier this week, and I told the story about Mark Stoops. And this may not be Mark Stoops' fault, but Trevor, I know you deal with coaches directly, and I'm sure you deal with some PR people. But a couple of years ago, Mark Stoops sat down with us, and I thought it was great, and I thought it was engaging, and I don't know who all listened to that. I have no idea who's driving in their cars listening. The next year, the PR team told us we'd have Mark, then we didn't have Mark, and then all of a sudden, I'm sitting here saying, okay, does Mark Stoops not want to be on the air in Nashville? This is a very popular show. And I think about it like this, and I go, how you're already there. It's not like you have to take time out of your day, Mark Stoops, to come to Nashville to sit down and talk to Nashville. You don't have to take time out of your day to go to Atlanta. But think about all the high school coaches and recruits' parents, and you have no idea who's listening, and you get in good with these hosts. And then maybe when there is a kid there and you want to go on in Atlanta, they'll say, okay, fine, we'll put Mark Stoops on the air. I have always thought about that. How much does that actually matter?
It matters tremendously, and I'll add another group of people to the audience that's out there potentially, and that's high school football coaches. They want to know where to recommend to their kids they should go. I mean, when I was being recruited out of Sacramento, California, way back in the day, in 2 years we had 11 guys get scholarships to what are now FBS schools. 11 guys out of one high school that was not known for football at all. As a matter of fact, they brought in a new coaching staff to try to get football kick-started. And they moved a lot of guys. The thing is, though, the coach did a really good job of matching guys with the best location. So there was one of our players, a tight end, that he really recommended to the player he should spend extra time checking out Nevada Reno. And it turned out he ended up getting a scholarship there. It was the right system. It was the right coaching staff, and it was the right talent level for him to go succeed. our running back went to Notre Dame, for goodness sake. And that turned out to be an interesting story. So as you look at all these different members of the audience, the high school recruits themselves, the parents, the friends of the recruits, et cetera, keep in mind that those high school coaches steer their players towards the college coaches and college programs that they think their players can have the most success in. And the more you can communicate with them, whether it's directly or whether it's over the airwaves, the better.
Mm-hmm. Vince Ferrara on WNML in Knoxville was on earlier today with our midday show, and obviously he covers Josh Heupel every single day, Trev. And Max, if we could, he was talking about this high school coaches media day that they do in Knoxville and some of the interviews he had with high school coaches. Here's what they said, or here's what he said about the high school coaches and Josh Heupel. Take a listen, Trev.
Really cool, great shot for those of us that call high school football games to learn about all the teams and everything else, get those kids exposure. It's awesome. So I interviewed a bunch of coaches, and I talked to a couple, including one high school coach that told me that Josh Heupel, he contacted him within days after getting the job, and that he didn't have any players. He said, I still don't. But he contacted me. We've texted a bunch of times. We talked on the phone, and he just really was impressed by how much he and then later his staff have contacted them and built their relationships. This is a program that's produced players in the past, but they don't have any D1 guys right now, any guys for UT, as he admitted. That is so important. That's something that Saban has done and other high-level players have done in building those relationships. If you wait until a school has a player and they hear from you for the first time 3 years into your tenure when they first want a player, you got too late.
Trev, what do you make of that?
I think that's awesome. I absolutely love that perspective. And I think it's great that Heupel is doing that. Again, just from a purely selfish standpoint, that high school coach doesn't have any players for him right now. Maybe the high school coach will, but maybe that high school coach will be coaching at a different high school down the road that has a lot more players. And so those relationships last, and they build those relationships, the most successful college coaches, for the long haul. Because they'll end up at a different college. Those high school coaches will end up at a different high school, but the relationships will remain the same. And I would suggest this. Go back and look at Baylor football. It wasn't that long ago that Baylor was literally seen as the laughingstock of college football. As this is the team you think of when you think of complete ineptitude. So they hired a longtime Texas high school coach by the name of Art Briles. And Briles had all kinds of horrible issues later on. But in building that program, in terms of the high school relationships, he made sure that not only did the big high school coaches know that he cared about them, he had relationships with high school coaches in little towns that were so far out of the way that Texas and A&M and the big schools didn't even bother to drive all the way out there, but he did. And then when those guys had some little 5'8" guy who could run like the wind, or some guy that was super strong, just had some capability that maybe he could play at Baylor, right? That coach was really interested in giving Art Briles a call and let him know, we have a guy that can play for you, right? And so these are the kinds of things that the relationships help to build. Because when those out-of-the-way places end up with that one guy can be a difference maker for you, and every single difference maker will attract more difference makers as time goes on. I love it that Heupel is doing that because he's showing the high school football coaches that he cares about his relationship with them and not just about which recruits they can supply to Josh.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say this, Trevor Matich with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. I'd say this too, Trevor. You can't out-recruit Alabama right now, but maybe you can out-relationship them. And I know that doesn't sound sexy, but I think that's probably one of the biggest keys if you're ever going to recruit with an Alabama or a Georgia or an LSU.
That's such a great line. And because everything, I mean, in our business in football, so much is about those relationships. And you look at schools that are apparently in the middle of nowhere. You look at Iowa State is a great example. Iowa State is winning, and they're a dark horse not just to win the Big 12, but also to make it into the playoff potentially. I mean, they're good. But it's not just because they got lucky. They're putting a bunch of guys into the NFL now. How are they doing that? They're building the foundation of the trust with the high school coaches, and those gems, those diamonds in the rough that bigger schools might not even know about, all of a sudden are on the radar, and they're able to evaluate them and get them in there and develop them. So, when you combine that with big places, I mean, you look at Tennessee. Tennessee is, in a big city. It's a national brand, and it's the kind of a place that, you don't have to recruit people there over the disadvantage of the city or the brand. The city and the brand are there. They just got to get the winning back. Now you add to that the kind of relationships that it seems like he's building that help smaller schools, Boise State, Iowa State, et cetera, build up to winning traditions. Then you have the potential to not out-recruit Alabama, but like you said, Jared, and this is great, out-relationship them. Those relationships lead to the kind of players that fit your system that you can develop to compete with an Alabama. And when you have a little bit of success, that leads to a little bit higher level of talent of recruit.
Last question on Tennessee, and then we'll get to the rest of the SEC, Trev. And that is the Power T brand. I don't think it matters anymore. Nobody who's alive they can play college football remembers when the Vols were at the top of college football. And Heupel got up there and said everything every other coach has said. The Power T brand, the history of Tennessee. I don't think recruits care anymore. Sometimes it almost comes off to me, Trev, as arrogant. What do you think?
No, I think it's what he has to do, because you're right about that. I mean, look at Nebraska. People that are over the age of 40 or so remember those great Nebraska teams, but today's recruits, Nebraska, just, well, whatever. They need Nebraska to prove some things. And this is what happens when you fall off the radar, because the attention span of today's recruits is the attention span of Twitter. They'll put up a post on Twitter, and if in 5 minutes they don't get enough likes, it's old news, it's gone, it's stale, and they have to put something else up. And this is the attention span. And so if you think of a recruit coming up at the age of 6, 7, 8, when they're really starting to pay attention to college football, they don't know Tennessee as being a winner, but their parents do, and their coaches do. So we start there. So how does Tennessee, while they're building the winning back, how do they get that brand to be seen at a higher level by the recruits themselves? And it's through repetition. That's one of the things, Jared, that really stood out to me about Heupel's performance at SEC Media Day. He repeated over and over again about what he considers the great tradition at Tennessee, the great opportunity that Tennessee football is, at the highest level of branding and tradition. He pointed out that all of their sports are top 5 nationally in social media followers, which is important now with NIL and all the things that players want to do with that. And it's repetition that he's trying to get done. If you talk to anybody in advertising, they'll tell you that you have to expose your brand to people many, many times before they'll buy. And so Heupel right now is trying to expose that brand in the light that he wants it seen as, and that's what he has to do until he doesn't have to do it anymore.
Trevor Matich is our guest, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. We'll get to the rest of the SEC, what he's heard so far, what he likes, plus prediction time is coming this week at SEC Media Days. Trevor Matich is our guest, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Stillman and Companies, delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. SEC Media Days is going on currently in Birmingham. Greg Sankey will join us in a little bit under or a little bit over 10 minutes. Trevor Maddich is with us, ESPN college football analyst. Trevor, brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters. A lot of stuff in the SEC to get to, Trev, but Greg Sankey said yesterday that postponing games because of COVID is not an option, a.k.a. get the shot. What do you make of that? Apparently, I believe there are 6 teams that are at the threshold. Georgia and Vanderbilt are 2 of them. What do you make of that scenario going into this year?
I think he sees a potential solution to not have to postpone games and reschedule games and do all the things that he saw not just in his own conference but other conferences as well last year. And I think he sees the vaccine as a way to make that happen. Now, whether or not it'll turn out that way, I don't know, but I think he sees it as a lever that could move him in that direction. And rather than just make a suggestion, what he's saying is that, look, if you miss a game, the idea is that it'll probably be just a forfeit and we'll move on. And that will really clarify the need for organizations to get their players vaccinated if that's what they think they should do. And I think it's not just a matter of the conferences, it's individual teams. I mean, Oklahoma coach Lincoln Riley was very open about saying that if he has 2 players competing for the same position and they're close, and one's vaccinated and one's not, he would lean towards the vaccinated player because he thinks that player is less likely to be in the COVID protocol and be out of practice and out of games for a couple of weeks. And so that's something that the players are going to have to think about, because there are players that don't mind getting vaccinated. There are others that have real concerns about it. But the ones who have concerns about it now have to add another concern, and that is that might limit their opportunities to play if their competition has been vaccinated. So on the conference level, Commissioner Sankey, Greg Sankey, I think is taking that to that level because he doesn't want to leave any stone unturned to make sure that COVID does not threaten this season any more than it has to.
Trev, Nick Saban said today, talking with a bunch of high school coaches, that Alabama quarterback Bryce Young, who's never played before, is approaching $1 million in endorsement deals under name, image, and likeness. 1, what do you make of that? And 2, you think Saban is getting the message out to recruits about, hey, if you come to Alabama, what do you make of it?
Well, this now is 1A, I think, in the top 4 reasons that recruits would choose a school. The best high school recruits, I think the most important thing for them is, can you get me to the NFL?
Yep.
And then you've got, how about national championships? How about how I fit there? Can I play early?
And we know Saban's not struggling in those departments.
Not at all. But now all of a sudden he adds this. I mean, this is the first person I've seen advertised in college football that's approaching $1 million. Now, there may be others, but this is the first one I've seen, so it's going to get the most attention. And so for those players that were thinking about another school over Alabama, all of a sudden the quarterback who's never started a game for you is approaching $1 million in name, image, and likeness, and it will go a lot higher. That is a massive recruiting tool, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I do think that getting to the NFL is 1A. This is probably 1B, but it may be 1A for a lot of players who think that they might not make it to the NFL, so they've got to make their millions in college.
Trev, I usually ask this question every year at SEC Media Days when I'm there, and it's a consistent one that is, okay, in the West, is it Alabama and everybody else, and in the East, is it Florida and Georgia and everybody else? How do you kind of see there as far as parity or competition this year in the SEC?
Yes, and sort of yes. In the East, it's Georgia and everybody else. I don't trust Florida right now. Their defense was so abysmal last year. Their running game, even with that all-timer of a passing attack with Kyle Pitts at tight end and stuff like that, that running game still couldn't move the ball when they had to have it against good defenses. And I don't see them getting better in the passing game or the running game. The defense, I think, has good pieces, but at this point, it's proven. Let me see it. I mean, their front seven especially is going to be pretty nasty. But I thought they'd be nasty last year, and they kind of weren't. And so I need to see it from Florida before I believe. And nobody else, I think, in the East is ready to challenge Although a lot of people like Missouri, I'm not so high on Missouri. I think Kentucky could be a really interesting team if they get a quarterback that can really play, because Kentucky couldn't ever throw the ball down the field in recent memory. Now they got guys like Joey Gatewood transfer from Auburn competing for the starting job, and they might add that to their repertoire. So that could be interesting. On the other side, though, Alabama, I just don't think anybody's ready yet. A&M is the closest because their defense is just a brick wall. Their running game, their skill players, their running backs, their tight end, Weidermeyer, their receivers are all phenomenal. The offensive line has to replace some pieces. They'll be okay. It's a real question, though, for them about quarterback. Kellen Mond has most of their passing records. Now they're going to have a guy replace Mond that's got no experience at all, for that matter. Haynes King is the guy that runs the most and the best. He's super fast, so we'll see what he can do. They've got other guys that can throw the ball really well, but the quarterback position is still too much of a question mark for me to say that while A&M is probably the the most likely to beat Alabama, until I know more about the quarterback position, I can't say that I have any confidence that they'll pull it off.
Trev, I always have this issue with SEC Media Days, and that is that I feel like sometimes narratives get spun there, and then all of a sudden 2019 LSU comes out of nowhere. And I wonder if there was a team like that in the SEC who's not getting appreciated enough this week, who is it?
I think LSU would be that team. And it really depends on quarterback as well. But Miles Brennan, he waited 3 years to start, and then he got a freak injury that was such a rare injury that they named the surgery after him. So that's kind of weird. But if he or somebody else is able to rise up at quarterback, I think that they have a chance to do really well and bounce back really fast, because they do have a lot of athletes. Auburn could be interesting. I think Auburn fans have been so frustrated with their love-hate relationship with quarterback Bo Nix. I mean, they'll be ready to fire the guy, the fans, and then he'll do something, and they'll say, okay, well, maybe he's okay now. But all of a sudden, T.J. Finley transferred over from LSU, and Finley's got a real legitimate arm. And all of a sudden, that quarterback position has become super intriguing at Auburn. And if one of those two guys rises up, let's just say Finley, with his arm, then Auburn could be interesting and put a scare into people. Now, does that mean that they're going to knock off Alabama? I'd still be stunned. I don't see any of the dark horses close enough to Bama or Georgia to have a win be anything other than a major upset. But those are the teams I think that might have a chance.
Trevor Maddox, last thing for you, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. What should fans take away from Conference Media Days?
Fans should take away the way they're treating COVID. This is just huge. We talked about Greg Sankey and what he was saying about getting up to that 85% vaccination threshold. And if COVID gets in the way, then if you can't play, you might have to forfeit. We're not going to bend over backwards this year. That seems to be what's going to happen. We'll see as things get more clarified as the weeks go on, as we head into summer camp. But then also with what Lincoln Riley said about the competition between players, and if one's vaccinated and one's not, how the vaccinated one might have the edge in getting the playing time because it's more likely that he'll be available and not be in the COVID protocol. It's not certain, but it's more likely according to what these coaches think. And so to me, the what they've learned from COVID last year and how they're applying those lessons now with so much more knowledge is the most interesting thing of all, because I wouldn't be overconfident if I'm a fan that the football season is going to go off without a hitch. With all the variants and things like that, it is very possible that there could be a huge wrench thrown into this year's college football season as well. And the way commissioners and coaches are handling it is very interesting.
Trevor Maddox, GSPN college football analyst, is always presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trev, we will talk soon.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Maddox joining us on the program. Chase McCabe sits down with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey live in Hoover at SEC Media Days. That's next. Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
wholesaling studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. With Jared Stillman on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. Chase McCabe live in Hoover at SEC Media Days. ESPN 1025 The Game's coverage of SEC Media Days is brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket, your equipment supplier in Nashville, including gaskets, hoses, hose fittings, seals, packing, joints, gauges, fire protection, cups, belting, and more. If you need it, they've got it. Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Chase McCabe is now live in Hoover with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey.
We're back here, SEC Media Days, all presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket on ESPN 1025 The Game. Chase McCabe with the Commissioner, Greg Sankey of the Southeastern Conference. And, Commissioner, it is certainly a pleasure to be here in person and see this again. You talked about times they are changing in your opening address yesterday and weave that in and out with the ever-changing landscape of college football. But how far have we come in the last 15 months getting through this virus, the social issues, and now rule changes as well?
Well, it's been busy, and you go back to March 11th, 12th, and 13th while we were in Nashville trying to figure out really how to play a tournament, and then to play a tournament without fans, and then to not play a tournament, not to mention stopping everything, which was really unimaginable. And then separate from the social issues, the legal issues, the legislative issues, just the weight of dealing with COVID, how to restart, how to continue forward, how to begin when a team may have to stop, and how to do that outdoors and indoors with 21 sports was a huge load. That's reality. And to have everything else added, the pace has really accelerated. And we've been busy before, but the last 15, 16 months have been a whole other level.
You made it a point to bring up, and you were asked about it, the scheduling, that this year you want everybody to play their schedules. There's not really a build-in for any type of realignment or rescheduling if need be. And you brought up vaccinations and how they are readily available to get. How important is it for the student athletes, the coaches, to heed that advice so you can get a full season in?
Well, it's highly important. And you start from the position that the production of the vaccines, multiple vaccine options, is an incredible product of scientific work. And the vaccines are effective. They prevent serious illness, most hospitalizations, reduce the spread. Not perfect. I don't know of any vaccine that actually is like 100% without issue or efficacy might vary a little bit, but the reality is they're highly effective. But you have to access the vaccine. And so I look at our teams, the global part of the teams, players, coaches, support staff members, do all this work to prepare for the season. Weightlifting, spring practice, off-season conditioning, finish the drill. Access the vaccine, which reduces the likelihood of disruption. Now, it appears we're going to have to consider, some of the mitigation factors, just being careful about hygiene still to prevent spread. But the vaccine's a central component, and now's the time to access the vaccine ahead of the season.
Commissioner Greg Sankey is here with us on ESPN 1025 The Game. Name, image, and likeness, of course, is another thing that has come into play. And this is not a surprise to anybody. It's been building for a long time. But you brought up that, right now there's uncertainty with it. Like, what's the regulations? And you'd like to see more of a congressional input on that. What needs to happen? When does this need to happen? How quickly does this need to happen to do this effectively?
Well, in a time of uncertainty, what people need is clarity. So one of the advantages is we can at least turn to state law. So in the state of Tennessee, what law has Tennessee adopted to govern name, image, and likeness? One of the fundamental problems, though, is if you're a high school senior looking to attend maybe Tennessee, maybe Kentucky, maybe Georgia, maybe Penn State, maybe Kansas, this whole range, you have to know the NLI laws in each of those states. I mean, that's just not fair to a young person. Help them evaluate their opportunities based on a common standard. And what the courts have said is the NCAA cannot overregulate. I think it was also problematic for the NCAA to adopt a set of rules that would have been in conflict with state laws, because you would have a set of legal issues or circumstances that would have had to have been resolved that seemed unresolvable. And so you end up looking to Congress saying, our student athletes, first and foremost, our prospective student athletes, deserve a consistent national standard. And I know there's a lot going on in Congress. They're spending not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars in considering that, or dealing with election laws or whatever. At the same time, college sports is special and important. And I don't know that Congress will act. I know there's a need for a national standard to help young people understand how to properly activate across the country and know that the people they're competing against on the other side of the line of scrimmage or in the other uniforms have that same opportunity, but have the same structure for their activity.
A lot of schools have brought people in to help educate, and I know that that's something that Coach Heupel of Tennessee said earlier today about that we're all about the education. Coach Smart said it as well. But do you believe it's the responsibility of the programs to educate these students that they may not have that same education at home of how to handle their finances, know who to trust, and know where to look?
Our campuses have been in the financial literacy education effort for years, so that's not new. The name, image, and likeness, the specific economic activity is new, and in part the answer is embedded in what the state law permits or requires. I think our schools are fully prepared to engage in that education. They don't want to see young people taken advantage of in this process. And some of that's done with outside firms. But understand there are a whole bunch of businesses that have been created around this activity. Not every one of those businesses is properly capitalized. There's no oversight. There may be some level of law, but that doesn't mean there's oversight. And so there's risks of exploitation. And we have examples, for example, in NASCAR, where people have given away or signed away some of their rights to access a ride in a car. And then they can't sign their autograph without money going someplace else. We don't want that in college athletics. For all the criticism about colleges exploiting young people, provide great support, great educations, and you walk away with your name, image, and likeness rights. That's not so clear right now, and we have to be attentive to that. So the education is paramount, but also a structure that provides the right kind of protection for those involved, particularly the student athlete who's signing agreements or being approached to sign agreements.
College sports, there's something special about it, whether it's football, basketball, softball, baseball. It just, there is something different. But that line between collegiate sports and professional sports continues to get blurred because of name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal acting similar to free agency. How important is it to try and preserve what's special about college sports?
I think it's critically important, and we have to have a national conversation among leaders regarding what is expected of college sports. I think the NFL is an incredible product. The NBA is an incredible product. Major League Baseball is an incredible product. The NHL, even though we don't have hockey. That's not college football, that's not college basketball, and that's not college baseball. And one could argue, by comparison, if we're just going to be professionals at a different level, that's a pretty poor comparison. It's just a different world. Those are pros. Talk to coaches who've moved from college to the NBA. Those men in the NBA are professional athletes. Here we have college students playing, highly talented. They want futures. But we're going to have to understand what we expect of our college programs for provision to our student athletes, what we expect of student athletes in this new world, and how we define college sports so that we continue to have the interest that makes it special.
This event is going to be coming to Nashville. Nashville is very important to the conference. Obviously, the basketball tournament takes place there. When there's this discussion of college football playoff expansion, where do you think Nashville falls into play as a potential for, any type of round in that?
It remains to be seen what happens with the college football playoff. So a format that includes expansion to 12 teams has been identified. That doesn't mean the college football playoff will move to 12 teams. That remains to be seen. And then it depends on when it happens, and we haven't even begun to think about, okay, where if we're outside the current 12-year agreement, where might games be played? I think facilities, community support are important. We're playing this year's national championship game in Indianapolis. Those stand separate from the bowl structures, depending on what the facility vision is long term in Nashville. That may open up an opportunity, but a lot of that where work is going to follow the if, and then the when, and then the what when we can get to the where.
Why is Nashville so important to the SEC?
Well, it's just north of our literal geographic center, but it is a dynamic city, one of the many dynamic cities. But you've seen this provided a populous and an incredible alumni base of ours located in Nashville. Obviously, Vanderbilt's right there. Knoxville's a couple hours away. Easy access for every one of our teams. So you think about a basketball tournament, it's a highly accessible city from within our footprint. There's plenty to do, a lot of fun in a positive way, a lot of history around the city, around sports, and there's a vibrancy. And when we were moving our men's basketball tournament around to individual sites for years, one of our presidents said we'd been in a city and there wasn't any buzz. And our president said that there's no buzz. And so worked with Sean Henry, Scott Ramsey, the city mayor at the time, and just said, hey, what could we come here as kind of a primary base? So like 3 out of 4 years is what worked. And just an incredible amount of work on the city's part, on the Sports Council's part, on the Predators' part. Just have really appreciated Sean and the spirit of cooperation we have there. And I tell you what, we have buzz around our basketball tournaments. Our women's tournament will be there this year, and then we'll have a little over, 12-year run, I think, with the men's tournament into the mid-30s potentially. So we're excited about what we've achieved and look forward to Media Days being there in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen you at some Preds games a time or two. Yeah. Always a good time. Commissioner, appreciate the time today. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for making the trip.
There you go, Commissioner Greg Sankey of the SEC. He loves Nashville, but he was a little non-committal when it came down to, are you going to get a playoff game here in Nashville? We'll get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Don't miss the spectacular summer spectacular. Don't miss the Smashville Summer Spectacular, featuring something for everyone in the family, including Preds giveaways, ice-making seminars, a job fair, the Nashville Locker Room Sidewalk Sale, photos with the King Clancy Memorial Trophy, and the James Norris Memorial Trophy, won by Roman Yossi, and much, much more. The Smashville Summer Spectacular is this Thursday through Sunday at Bridgestone Arena. Stillman and Company, we're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app. Stillman & Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. Great interview with Greg Sankey by Chase McCabe, who's down there thanks to our friends at Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Let me tell the fine folks out there, tune into Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9. The Sounds begin a 6-game road trip against the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, the AAA affiliate of the Marlins, tonight at 6 o'clock on ESPN 94.9. Nashville Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9 is presented by 312 Pizza Company. So, a couple of things from Sankey. The first one that I took away was Chase asked him about whether or not Nashville could get in an expanded college football playoff, whether or not Nashville could get a game. Now, I believe that Greg Sankey's got some yank. So if he really went to bat for Nashville to get a game, I think he could get us in the rotation. I really do think that he's got that kind of pull. But he sidestepped the question and said, well, we haven't figured that out yet. And, did a very nice job of sidestepping it without giving any sort of a committal answer. Do you think if it goes to 12, and it will, if it goes to 12 for the college football playoff, do you think we'll get a game? Do you think? Because if it goes to 12, there's going to be, 6 games?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, because the first 4 get a bye.
So then there would be
in the first round there
because there's already 3 games.
4. In the first round there would be 4, and then there would be 2 and then 1. Is that right?
So there'd be 7 games.
7 games.
Okay. If there's 7 games and the national championship is by itself, so it doesn't count. So there'd be 6 games. Do you think we'll be in the rotation for one of those?
I do. Because you look at a lot of the schools that tend to get into the college football playoff.
You don't think they'll take the Rose? You don't think they'll take all the traditional BCS bowls and just put them all around? So it's like Rose, Sugar, Fiesta, Orange, whatever. Kick it all around, and then someone gets a championship game.
I think they may, but also the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, those are going to get a lot of viewership and a lot of popularity among the national discussion because of what they are and because of the teams that get into those bowls. So I think that the NCAA may take advantage of maybe some of these smaller bowls that aren't traditionally the big hitters in terms of the national championship and maybe try and hype those up a little bit. I do think that, the Nashville is pretty centrally located within the country. It has a ton of culture. It's a destination place for a lot of people.
Not a warm weather city, though.
Well.
And no dome.
No dome. That's true. Not a warm weather city. So that might hurt them.
So here's the thing. They've got to get the Rose Bowl on board with all of this because the Rose Bowl, they are the most uppity, noses up in the air, we will play the Rose Bowl game on January 1st, and it will have a team from the Pac-12 and a team from the Big Ten, the end. That's how they are. Mm-hmm. Now, they're okay with being in the rotation for a playoff game when it's on January 1st. If you put the Rose Bowl on a different day, it's not interested. So they want to be there. Now, there's 7 bowls, I believe, that would qualify as kind of the big boys. The Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, now the Cotton Bowl. So those are your, kind of rotational
Could you throw
teams.
the Citrus Bowl in there?
No, because they don't currently host a college football playoff game.
Okay.
So those are the 7 that host the playoff as of right now.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, I would think that they would probably just take those. And that every year the playoff would be Sugar, Orange, Fiesta, Peach, and Cotton. But there is a traditional element to this in college football, which is, you want an SEC team in the Sugar, you want an ACC team in the Orange, you want a Pac-12 team in the Rose, you want a Big 12 team in the Cotton, that kind of thing, which would obviously go in the toilet if you were to have all of these be playoffs, and then it's just whatever the playoff seeding is what you get. And then there's all the talk about the home field stuff, too. So I don't even know what to make of it, to be honest.
And we do stand corrected by several texters. It is 11 games.
A 12-team playoff would be 11 games?
Yes. Because you start with the first round's 8 teams, so that's 4 games.
Okay.
The second round is also 8 teams because you
Right, you
lose
have the
half
first four
and then
in
you
the
get the
bye.
first 4. So that's 4 games. So that's 8. And then you have the semifinals and the finals.
Okay,
So,
well, all right, then let's pull up the bowl list. Let's say that those are the first 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rose, sugar, orange, fiesta, peach, cotton.
mm-hmm.
Who comes after that? You know, like, what is the pecking order? I'm with you. The Citrus Bowl is up there. So they're certainly ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Citrus Bowl. You've got, is the Gator Bowl ahead of us? Like, I always
Sun
view-
Bowl?
No, Sun Bowl sucks. Sun Bowl's that crap CBS game that no school wants to get invited to because it's in El Paso, Texas.
Yeah, fair. There's the Outback Bowl.
Outback Bowl's probably ahead of us.
Nice Weather City.
So I've always thought that the Outback Bowl, now the Outback Bowl and the Gator Bowl, well, one of them's in Jacksonville, the other's in Tampa. Those 2 games, I've always thought
Outback's
are kind
in
of
Tampa.
on par with us. Like those 2, the Belk Bowl, like I've always thought they're kind of on par. I think I'd say the Citrus Bowl is ahead.
I would say the Citrus Bowl feels like a playoff destination, but is not.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's in that upper tier of non-playoff bowls.
But are you going to put them all in? Are you going to put them all in
Can't put
Florida?
them all in Florida. I mean,
So-
you can do whatever you want, but
Outside of the Rose Bowl, what's in California that matters? Are they going to create a bowl in order to put a game at the Ram Stadium? But I don't think people there care.
But then are you going to get all of the other bowls that are already sponsored and there's already a lot of buy-in and amount of money pumped into there getting mad saying, okay, well, we already exist. We're right here. Why
But
do
if
you
you're
have to make a new
ESPN,
one?
but if you're ESPN and you own both, wouldn't you rather do that so then you have more inventory?
Yeah.
But do you need more inventory because the bowl season kind of sucks anyways?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying is like, does anyone care about the Gasparilla Bowl?
Pinstripe Bowl?
Pinstripe
Gasparilla
Bowl?
Bowl, the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl, I believe, is also in Tampa. Like, why does Tampa have 2 bowl games?
I don't know. It is in Tampa. The Gasparilla Bowl's in Tampa. I don't know. I mean, do you think they're going to see like maybe international college football games?
But there's also 2 bowl games in Orlando because there's the Russell Athletic Bowl and there's the Citrus Bowl. And I guess it's not the Russell Athletic Bowl anymore, but it's one of those bowls.
Is the Cheez-It Bowl in Phoenix as well? Because, I mean, Phoenix would
Yes,
have
but
the
I think that's
Fiesta
at the
Bowl and the
I
Cheez-It
think that's
Bowl.
at the baseball stadium. So forget the baseball ones, like the Pinstripe Bowl.
I don't think
they're
so.
not playing college football game in Yankee Stadium.
Right. And then there's the Arizona Bowl. That's also in Phoenix.
But none of those are more important than us, I don't think.
No. I'm just saying in terms of cities.
So how would you do it? Would you take all? You can't play 2 bowl games in Orlando, but Orlando gets one because Orlando has the stadium,
Yes.
and that is a college football stadium. So Orlando gets one,
And I would
so
say
now you're
it's the
at 8.
Citrus Bowl.
Okay, so now you're at 8.
Does
now
the
who's
Liberty
9?
Bowl count?
I almost cursed on the air. No, it does
If you're not watching the stream, you should have just looked at Jared's face. He was so mad at me even mentioning the Liberty Bowl.
Well, it was that I was about to say a word that I can't say, and so my face as I went to say it.
Yeah.
As I
You
went,
caught yourself.
Oh,
No
I
harm,
mean,
no foul.
Do you know what word I was about to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So for the Liberty Bowl. Okay. So
I'm just saying.
we're at 8 with Citrus. Let's take one of the Tampa Bowls because we have to take a Tampa Bowl.
Uh-huh.
So that's what's that? Outback?
Outback Bowl.
Okay, but now we've maxed out Florida, right?
Florida's done. Do you think that? So I mean, the Citrus Bowl.
So we're in
the
Miami?
Sugar Bowl. That's a lot of southeastern cities.
Right. We're in Miami. We're in Orlando,
Mm-hmm.
and we're in Tampa. We're in Dallas, Atlanta, Phoenix, and Los Angeles.
And also New Orleans, if you're looking at the Sugar
Yes.
Bowl.
Now leave out the Northeast because they don't care about college football.
It's cold. Nobody wants to go. So you've got some Southeast in there, and you've got some West in there. You got to fill in the middle a little bit.
But you're not going to play in the Midwest, are you?
You're not going to play in.
You're not going to play at Soldier Field.
No, you're not going to play in Iowa.
So forget about them. So now to me, it's really we're competing with Texas and the West. Now, I think there is a bowl in Houston every year. I think Vanderbilt played in it a couple of years ago. It's like the Advocare Bowl or something stupid like that.
That's a domed stadium. Energy.
Big city.
Big city. And it's...
What is that bowl game?
I'll see.
Texas Bowl.
I think it's the Texas Bowl. That's right. Because
Texas
Vanderbilt was
Bowl.
in there. Max would know.
That's what it was called when Vandy was in it, at least.
The Texas Bowl?
Yes.
I think, I personally would rather have it here, but I'm thinking they probably would put it in Houston before they put it here.
Big city. And I think the dome is a big thing. Better weather in a dome.
Okay, so we're going to put the Texas Bowl ahead of us, even though I don't think anybody would argue that the Texas Bowl is a bigger bowl than the Music City Bowl.
I would agree.
Okay, so your 11th and final game, I think, comes down to us in the Belk Bowl in Charlotte.
Yeah. But I mean, again...
But the ACC is going to push for Charlotte.
And Nashville is more centrally located than Charlotte.
But the ACC is going to push for Charlotte. ESPN has a studio in Charlotte. I think it's probably, no disrespect to us, I think it's probably a better college football. Well, not college football. It's probably a better college city than Nashville.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Probably.
So it's us or Charlotte. So do you think we're going to get a game?
I still do.
It's us or Charlotte. Unless you want to get rid of the Texas Bowl.
Unless they also want to add a further west game as well.
Like at the Ram Stadium?
Yes. Because that's pretty southeast, East Coast heavy.
And let's not leave out Las Vegas with their new stadium.
That's another thing.
Guys.
A texture offers up the Lucas Oil in Indianapolis. I don't think
So they're getting the national championship game this year.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have a bowl.
Right.
So they're
and
out.
if the national championship is there, I mean, I know that the national championship can be in the same destination as a bowl, but it's Indianapolis, you know?
Okay, so I asked Ryan Porth this question over the weekend, just yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
I said, in the next 10 years, do you think we'll get a major league team? What do you think? In the next 10 years, will we have a major league baseball team?
Like, I want to say yes.
Binary yes or no?
No.
He said yes. Joe Rexroad said no, I believe. I am so on the fence about that, but I don't want to get my hopes up. As far as us getting a playoff game, I'm not getting my hopes up. I'm not getting my hopes up for a college football playoff game.
You think it's more likely that Nashville would have a baseball team?
I do. I think it's 50-50. Like, I think it's 50-50 that we could get a baseball team. I think it's like 30% that we get a playoff game. We should get a playoff game. No doubt we should get a playoff game.
Yes.
I also would not rule out other cities getting playoff games created for the Bulls. I'll give you an example. Cincinnati. Now, I hate Cincinnati because I think it's in Kentucky anyways, but I could see Cincinnati. You know how I feel about the state of Ohio. I could see Cincinnati or Cleveland getting a bowl game with their stadium because Ohio State is consistently in the playoff. So I could see that. I don't love it. Sankey's the only way we get a playoff game here because all the other conferences are going to push for somewhere else. Again, to the point about Lucas Oil, the Big Ten's going to push for that. The ACC is going to push for Charlotte or Florida. Nobody in any other conference is pushing for here. And Atlanta's already got one. And New Orleans already has one. And so you can argue with the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl that the SEC footprint's kind of maxed out, and that includes the two in Florida we just added and the one in Texas we added. That's all SEC footprint stuff.
And I do think if it came down to Nashville or Charlotte, it would be in Charlotte because that's also like an SEC town. I know it's an ACC town, but it's also the SEC network is located in Charlotte.
And ESPN gets a vote because they own all of it.
Right. So I could see it leaning towards Charlotte just because it's more of a a dual city rather than Nashville being pretty predominantly SEC.
Look at you call. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Do you think we're going to get a playoff game? Greg Sankey kind of sidestepped the question in his interview with Chase. Very good interview by Chase. 615-737-1025. We're right to you next. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Blue Raider Blitz is rolling across the mid-state to a town near you, led by Middle Tennessee State Blue Raider football coach Rick Stockstill. This community-wide event will be guaranteed fun for the whole family. Each one of the 7 stops will include food, ticket giveaways, and a chance to mix and mingle with MTSU's coaching staffs and the best mascot in Conference USA, Lightning. For more information, go to blueraider.com/tour. Stillman & Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
There's this discussion of college football playoff expansion. Where do you think Nashville falls into play as a potential for, any type of round in that?
It remains to be seen what happens with the college football playoff. So a format that includes expansion to 12 teams has been identified. That doesn't mean the college football playoff will move to 12 teams. That remains to be seen. And then it depends on when it happens, and we haven't even begun to think about, okay, if we're outside the current 12-year agreement, where might games be played? I think facilities, community support are important. We're playing this year's national championship game in Indianapolis. Those stand separate from the bowl structures, depending on what the facility vision is long-term in Nashville. That may open up an opportunity, but a lot of that where work is going to follow the if, and then the when, and then the what, when we can get to the where.
There you go. That was Greg Sankey, facilities and community support, and then brought up the future of the facility in Nashville. The Titans are going to renovate that stadium. They are not going to demolish it and build another stadium, and they're not going to get a dome. They're not going to do any of that. So does that rule us out for the possibility of having a college football playoff game in Nashville?
Not getting a dome?
Yes.
I mean,
we're not getting a dome.
It's going to be January. I mean, it's going to be cold, but also, like, it's a bowl game, Like, have you ever seen Lambeau Field when it's minus 32 degrees?
Yeah, but college doesn't want that.
I know. And I do also wonder, I mean, Greg Sankey, who was like, we'll figure out the specifics first and then the where. I hear him. Do we trust him?
No.
You think they've thought about it?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything they do, they've thought about. Like, college football. You and I have talked about this. I think if we look at, the political structure of America and we look at the people who make decisions in college football, they look very, very similar.
Yes.
And I think they act very, very similar at times. They give you all these reasons and they gaslight you on so many things. And in reality, it's all about the money. I mean, and that's what they do. We got the community support. I still think they'd go to Charlotte before they'd go here. And I still think they'd go dome before they'd come here. So I'm not sure we got much of a shot with that. Depressing.
It is sad. But if Nashville had a dome, I think it would have been a little bit more of a likely place.
Yeah, but we just never had the money to do that.
And also,
we gave all the money to the Titans.
I fully believe that football sports, other than probably basketball and hockey, are meant to be watched outside. I like outside football games.
I went to the Marlins game a couple of weeks ago, or last week, or whenever I was in Miami. I went to when the Marlins played the Braves. That stadium, you would think on TV is super cool. Like, you were like, oh my God, it looks like this incredible, like, spaceship of a stadium.
Right.
And in reality, like, it kind of sucks. And it's indoors, and it feels
That's so
indoors.
weird.
And, like, I've been to Houston, where it didn't feel as indoors in a baseball game. I don't know. That stadium.
It's just not
everything
right.
about that stadium, the financing of that stadium, where the stadium's located. Like
in Miami?
Yeah, all of it. Like, it's all terrible. Like, they could have the structure of First Horizon Park, and they still wouldn't fill it. They have so few fans. Let's go to your phones. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam is up next. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Adam.
It sounded like Chase asked him to prom, and he wasn't expecting it and didn't want to go with Chase. So he gave every answer you could possibly give, saying, no, you're not getting one, but didn't just right out say it because he was being recorded. I do have a question. Y'all keep talking about this dome, though, man. Why is that a thing? Why do you have to have a dome for a Super Bowl and a dome for these big games? Because I would personally love to see a snowy Super Bowl. I think it would be awesome. And if you have to have a dome, why did Nashville not build a dome when they were building their stadium? Makes no sense.
So I appreciate your call, Adam. I would say this. They don't want bad weather to ruin a game. Like a Super Bowl or...
When you're talking about the playoffs, it's in January.
Yeah, they don't want bad weather to ruin a game. I'm okay with that. It's home field advantage when you're in the playoffs in the NFL, but they don't want it to ruin the Super Bowl. I get that. I'm fine with that. Now, the idea of why they didn't build a dome, we didn't have the money for them to build a dome at the time. Well, I don't think we have the money now to build them a dome. So we're not getting a dome. So we're not going to get the Final Four ever, and we're not going to get, back then, like nobody's ever talking about the Super Bowl when we got the Titans. Like we had Vandy. That was all we had. Nobody's talking about the Super Bowl back then. So it's, times are different. What we got in the text line?
One texter texts into the text line and says, what about the Alamo Bowl?
Dude, where is that played? San Antonio?
Somewhere in Texas. Where's the
they're
Alamo? Is
they're
it San
not going to
Antonio?
San Antonio.
Yeah.
The Alamo Dome, that place stinks. The place is old. They are not going to the Alamo Dome. They are going to NRG Stadium before they go to the Alamo Dome.
I would agree.
San Antonio. I'd say what I want to say, but even Charles Barkley can't say anymore, so, What else we got?
Chris texts in and says, what about the LA Bowl? Wasn't it created and canceled last year? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I didn't follow the LA Bowl. I mean,
I'll do some digging.
This is my thing on the Bulls. And this is where, you know how I'll talk about things like the home run derby in baseball, how it mattered to
It is the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl, to clarify.
Jimmy Kimmel's got a bowl?
Yeah, I guess so.
Dude, I always used to think when I heard Judge Judy made $50 million a game, I was like, Judge Judy could legitimately buy a bowl game. And could you imagine the Judge Judy Bowl?
That'd be awesome.
Chris Sanders would do the coin toss every year.
Where would it be? Oh, he loves Judge Judy.
He loves the coin toss and he loves Judge Judy. I mean, that's his thing. But no, whatever, fine.
It's at SoFi Stadium.
That's the Rams.
That's the Rams Stadium, yes.
We're not getting a playoff game. And I tried.
Jimmy Kimmel gets everything.
If you look at my pad, I scribbling in all this info. Maybe we could get a bowl game. We're not getting a bowl game. I want to get a bowl game, but we're not going to get a bowl game. And I think Adam was onto something there. That is, he wasn't ready for Chase to ask him to prom, and so he didn't want to say yes, but he didn't want to say no. And he probably knows we're not getting a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's finalized because I don't think anything about that 12-team playoff expansion is finalized. I think it's a way bigger mess than anyone anticipated it to be, but yeah.
You know what's crazy is that I always think it's funny, like in these media tours and these where the guy is legitimately prepared to be asked the same question 60 times by the different people. And every now and then you get a question that you're just not ready for. Like, whoa, where did that come from? And that usually, now Sankey's a pro, but that usually yields the best answers. Yeah. When you're not ready for it, and it's like, and I'm not saying like trying to play gotcha with somebody, but that usually has the best response.
Usually because they don't know how to answer it, so they
and
just
ramble.
Yeah. Yep, they ramble on.
They've practiced everything else. Caroline's is coming up next. Yours truly out with the early, brief lead. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The Blended Festival, that's right. The ultimate social experience is coming to Nashville. My Wine Society presents the Blended Festival August 13th and 14th at First Horizon Park with live performances by Cascade, Little John, Matt Stell, Blanco Brown, Bryce Vine, and more. Actually met Blanco Brown at this celebrity softball game.
Did you?
No idea who he was, but he's a very nice guy.
Great.
Enjoy Blended's massive 100-foot wine tasting tent and indulge in culinary activations by Nashville's hottest chefs. There's also Blended's relaxing wellness VIP lounge, their wellness lounge, VIP village, and a whole lot more. Get Blended tickets on sale now at blendedfestival.com. Use promo code GAME at checkout for 10% off your ticket. Stillman & Company's delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. NBA Finals Game 6 tonight. Bucks and Suns. I think I have to root for the Suns, right?
You have to?
I think I have to.
You don't have to do anything.
No, I think Ryan Porth will blow up my phone to no end if Giannis Antetokounmpo wins the NBA Finals and the MVP.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. If you want to be called the pancake, you can take the Bucks, but I think that.
I mean, I didn't say Giannis wasn't a good basketball player. I say he's not a superstar. He's just not like a needle-moving superstar.
He can't shoot a free throw. He can't shoot.
Look at the ratings. They're down 50% from 2019. Not that I care about popularity, but when it comes to superstardom, popularity matters. Case in point, we watched Space Jam the other night and then turned on the basketball game.
Well, you also just, I don't think, care about basketball that much.
You do this to me every time I have a different opinion with you on a sport. You tell me I don't care enough about the sport.
Well, because you don't care about college football that much.
I spent the whole day talking about college football.
Yeah, I think you care about it. I don't think you really do.
What do I have to do to care more about it?
I don't know. I gotta feel it. You know, you gotta sell it to me.
Oh, if we had a college football off, like a college football trivia off, I'd crush you.
Oh, okay.
I'd crush you.
Okay.
I'm just saying. Speaking of crush, yesterday,
you did not crush me yesterday.
We had 4 games. One got rained out to Wednesday, so we'll have to decide which game counts, whether it's the noon start or the 5 o'clock start. That counts for which one we judge on Wednesday.
Whichever one the Padres win, I think we should count.
Oh, okay. Well, we both picked the Padres.
Oh.
And we have soccer tonight. You've got Vancouver. I've got Houston. That's on ESPN+. The Mets coming through for me, and we
Whoever
both lost.
took the over on that game, shout out to you. It was, 15-11?
Something like that. We both lost Astros and Indians, only because I took the Indians in the money line. If I'd taken them plus 1.5, I would have won. You took them minus 1.5, and they won by 1 run. So it's time now for Caroline's.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Caroline's. Here on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Game was rained out last night, and they will play tonight. Braves, Padres. I'm going to take Padres on the money line. I mean, I believe it's the same starting pitchers in Yu Darvish and Kyle Muller. But
Tiki Toussaint is going for the Braves.
Okay. Well, then I looked at the wrong starting pitchers. I probably looked at the one from last night, but I'm still going to take the Padres. I mean, I'm going to take young talent for the Padres over the Braves.
I'm going to go with the Braves in the money line here.
All right.
The reason being, better odds, but also Tiki Toussaint making his season debut. This is maybe his last chance, and the Braves do this crazy thing where you don't expect them to win, and then they do. So I'm going to take the Braves in the money line.
Okay, respect. We also have Cardinals-Cubs tonight, the second game of that series. I'm going to take the Cubs on the money line. So Cardinals whooped the Cubs last night in game 1 of that series.
I actually saw that on TV
8-3.
last night.
Yeah. The Cardinals looked great last night. However, Cardinals starting pitcher, right-hander Johan Oviedo, he's not good. He is 0-5. He's got a 5.09 ERA. His last outing against San Francisco, he allowed 2 runs, 3 hits, 4 walks in 4 innings. Last time he saw the Cubs on the road was on June 11th. He gave up 4 runs, 5 hits, and a walk in a little over 4 innings. I don't trust that starting pitcher. Trevor Williams is on the mound for the Cubs. He's 3-2, 5.51 ERA across 10 starts, 1 relief appearance. Not necessarily a rubber match, but I take the Cubs on this one from a bounce back after last night.
So I am going to take the Cubs on the money line in this one for the same. I don't think the Cardinals are very good. I don't think the Cubs are very good, so they're going to have to split right here. I'm going to jump in with mine before we end the show on the NBA. USA Olympic women's soccer in the group stage against Sweden at 3:30 in the morning.
I'll be up.
I believe that we will win. I'm going to take USA minus 1.5. I just think our Olympic soccer team is just, our USA women's national team is just too darn good. She believes. Give me the Americans minus 1.5.
Okay. All right. Well, I hate to be one to pick against the U.S. national team because, our female soccer players are just incredible, but I want to be different, so just give me Sweden.
Plus 1.5 or money line?
Money line. You played this game with me yesterday.
Ooh, yeah, and it cost me. Burned me.
Yeah.
If I had taken a plus 1.5.
We've also got an NBA Finals game tonight. Could end it all if the Bucks win tonight, but I'm going to take the Suns on the money line plus 158. Chris Paul has been a turnover machine, and that has cost the Suns these 3 games that they have lost.
And that's why you're picking him?
No, if you let me finish. I think that he is going to bounce back tonight because they know these repercussions. Because, I mean, if Chris Paul loses tonight, this might be one of the most disappointing NBA Finals endings for one certain player of all time.
I'm going to take the Bucks on the money line.
All right.
I think that I think Game 5, I think the series was teetering, and I think whoever wins that wins the series in 6. And I think the Bucks get it done at home. Fear the deer, and I'm sure Ryan Porth will have a lot to say to me tonight when Giannis Antetokounmpo is named NBA Finals MVP. Though I would give it to Drew Holiday right now. Just the way things are going.
You would.
I would give it to Drew Holiday over giving it to Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I know how they are.
But Giannis will get... Why? Because he's a superstar.
No, that's not why. The ratings will go down by about 5,000 percentage points. That's it for us. We're out of here. The game tonight, NBA Finals, right here,